I'd now like to call up Senate Bill 56 for its first hearing. Here to provide sponsored testimony is Senator Huffman. When you're ready,
all right.
Please proceed. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Thomas, members of the House Judicial Committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity for sponsored testimony to Senate Bill 56, which seeks to streamline the administration of Ohio marijuana programs and address several public safety concerns. Many of the provisions in the bill may look familiar, as they are largely reflective of what the Senate passed in House Bill 86 last General Assembly. First, the bill merges Ohio's medical and adult use marijuana programs under the Division of Cannabis Control, which voters recently established with the passage of Issue 2. Consolidating both programs under the division will allow for consistent requirements regarding testing, packaging, labeling, advertising, especially those related to protect children. It also provides for streamlining license standards and general compliance procedures, cutting down on bureaucracy, red tape, and government waste. It is important to note the bill ensures those entities who were issued licenses under Issue 2 maintain their licenses, as many have already been granted and are operational. The bill also addresses several public safety concerns, such as banning public smoking, prohibiting driving while the driver or any passenger is using marijuana, or ensuring homegrown marijuana is not grown at residents that operated in-home daycare program. Senate Bill 56 respects the voters' wanted home grow, but sets a more reasonable limitation of 6 plants per household. Further, the bill clarifies the ability of local law enforcement to investigate alleged violation and harmonize employer protection regarding drug-free workplace policies. Unlike as introduced version of the bill, passed version would keep the excise tax on marijuana at 10%, just like the initiated statute. And to me, that is something to be discussed during the budget, but would be happy to have further discussion here. Senate Bill 56 also requires the same expungement language in 86. Ohioans who had previously been convicted of a minor marijuana possession that is now legal under Issue 2, Senate Bill 56, may have the conviction expunged upon application to the court. Funding is not currently included in that, as the Senate intends to consider revenue in the budget. In short, the bill is about government efficiency, consumer safety, and maintaining access to voter approval, adult use marijuana. I think this bill, and looking at Representative Stewart's bill, I think it has this kind of the same thing. The theme on it is to be reasonable, protecting children, and to clean some things up in the medical, recreational, and try to harmonize things to make it a better system. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks for your testimony. Representative Calendar's question. Oh, sure.
Thank you. How'd you know I had a question? I didn't even raise my hand yet.
Okay.
Good to see you, Senator. And you and I have had a few hours of discussions on this over the years, so I won't belabor a lot of points.
Sure.
Just, I appreciate the time you've spent in learning this and drafting, and the dozens, if not hundreds of hours that we spent together last session. There are 2 specific things I want to ask about in this. The first one is on the tax side, the change of the distribution of funds, specifically the local government. I know a lot of our townships and municipalities have been calling. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a key thing in the bill for you, or?
Chairman, the representative, for myself, it's something that we need to get right. Initially, it was all going to the General Revenue Fund, and the Senate was going to discuss it. The sub-bill put it back as Issue 2 passed it. I do think at some point in the budget or in this bill, we need to address that. And I know that there's other, 5 years at 20%. Should it be 36? One thing after I introduced it, it was going to the General Revenue Fund. Myself and many people in General Assembly have heard from the locals that this would be unfair because they agreed to have the dispensary because they agreed they feel there was going to be some negative, but the money was going to help them to build a park or do other things. So it is further discussion. I don't really have a decision, but we need to honor that, and for how much and how long is to be determined, in this bill by this committee and the Senate here or in the budget.
Follow up?
Thank you. The second of my three question topics is the number of licenses to be issued and the different sizes. It looked to me in reading the way it came out of the Senate that this eliminates the voter approved level 3s and some of the new distribution sites as well, and limits it to a number not a whole lot greater than what's already been issued. And I think I have a couple of concerns there I'd like you to address. And one of the big ones is for the consumer, the pricing. Obviously, supply and demand works in this as in any industry. Mm-hmm. And if you limit the supply by not issuing the voter approved licenses, extensions, dealing with some of our processors now that this will take away the potential for them to get a supply by having a small grow site, the level 3s or something similar. Do you have some concerns about that economically, that will continue to have folks drive up to Michigan or New York because of the price differential?
Chairman, to the representative, absolutely. Not in this bill, but I believe in several years, next General Assembly, the one after that, I think we should totally deregulate marijuana in the state of Ohio, in the sense that we should not have, if we're capitalists, we should let other people have more grow space if they can do it under the current regulations with the number of cameras, the number of security and all that stuff, which would drive down the price. So I don't believe that we're going to tackle that in this General Assembly, but I believe in the future, once the return on equity to the large price and the risk that the current cultivators and others people in the process, because if you can grow it better, then good for you, and that's what we should buy. Or if you can have a better dispensary, that should, we don't limit the number of grocery stores or the number of Krogers or anything like that. Certainly not the number of gas stations in the state of Ohio after the last several years. So would certainly look at that. But directly to your question, I know we eliminated the level. What would be new would be the level 3, which is a very small growth. And the thought process there was it would be very difficult for a 3,000 square foot cultivator to compete against a 10 or 12 that are growing at 100,000 square feet. Maybe they do have a niche market. Maybe there's some analogies to a craft brewer, but thought that was going to kind of be a revolving thing that would be difficult and expensive to regulate.
Thank you.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The final question is an overarching. I really appreciate your answer about 2 or 3 years from now, a much more open market. I think that's what the voters were kind of thinking when they voted that legalization means legalization. Are you okay working, and I assume you are working with Representative Stewart and having the House bill or choosing one of the bills as a vehicle and working with the other chamber to get something that's mutually agreeable? I would be very open to working with Representative Stewart. If this is the vehicle, his is the vehicle, I just believe the important thing is that we get something done by July 1st. And I think that looking at what he has and what I have, I don't believe that things are very far apart. I think that that can be done. And if I may, Chairman, address another topic is the Senate decided to do this in 2 parts. Today we will vote out Senate Bill 86, my bill for hemp. Very similar topics, yet very complex and different. We chose to do 2 different bills. Representative Stewart has a bill where they're combined. I don't believe there's a right way or a wrong way to do it. If the House comes back and says, we're going to put it all together and here it is,
I won't disagree with that. I just, again, I also would tell you, in my opinion, hemp is the more important topic, just because there's no regulation. Bad things are happening to kids with hemp. And so if they both come together in some way, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Great. All right. Representative Isaacson with a question.
Thank you, Chair. Senator, thank you so much for your testimony today. I just want to start trying to get a sense of sort of the impetus behind the bill, because it was initially introduced, or that a bill like this, right after the voters voted on issue 2. And so can you just give a sense, as the sponsor of this bill, what do you think primarily voters were voting on? What did they think they were voting on when they, voted overwhelmingly for issue 2? What were the core components that they went to the ballot for, in your view?
Chairman, to the representative, we'll never know that, but I think, some voted for homegrown, some, for the recreational and other things, but we'll never know exactly what it is, because, I'm sure things that people voted for, looked in there and said, well, I don't like these couple things, but I like this. So it's difficult, I'll tell you, I voiced my opinion. I thought I voted no for issue 2, but we have this and we have to accept that. The voters of Ohio came out and said, with a fair number of yes, here it is. And this is to, I think, make it better. And I think in the long run, my personal opinion, the average recreational marijuana user in this bill, or Representative Stewart's bill, really doesn't do much to change, but I think there's a lot of positive in combining the two, the bureaucracy and the decreasing regulations to make it easier for people, which hopefully will decrease the price.
Follow up.
Thank you. Would it be fair to say that the voters were voting to legalize the recreational use of cannabis and marijuana?
Yes, sir.
All right, follow up, Chair.
Follow up.
Okay, so I agree. I think that is, at its basic element, that's what voters certainly knew they were voting on. So I have a few questions about the rationale or the thinking behind some of these criminal changes and the penalty changes. Am I understanding your bill correctly, that if someone were to pass a joint or a gummy or something to someone else to use recreationally, that would then, under this bill, shift the law back to making that criminal?
I believe so.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yes, please. And is it accurate that if someone is a passenger in a non-moving vehicle and they eat a gummy as the passenger of that non-moving vehicle, they would then be subject to 3 days mandatory jail time?
I would have to look deep into that, Chairman. I can't remember if it says combustion or consumption. So I'm not evading the question. If you can correct me, I'm not sure.
Let's say they're smoking a joint.
Well, yes. Then the answer is yes. That would be illegal.
Okay. Follow up. So I guess what I'm trying to understand from your perspective is if the voters, as you noted, clearly voted to legalize the recreational use of marijuana, how does recriminalizing things like passing a joint or sitting on the side of a car and that may or may not be moving and, smoking a joint, how does that jive with respecting the will of the voters to vote to legalize the recreational use when it is recriminalizing some of the most fundamental uses or the most common uses of cannabis? Just how are you thinking about those two kind of conflicting realities?
Through the chairman, I guess in the same sense that, take that to extreme, then I should smoke a joint here, right here in the chamber. I don't think that's what the people actually would want, because that would be, in that theory, you should do whatever you want. I think the extent of the bill was to try to be reasonable and safe for everybody. And I understand that there's difference of opinion of what reasonable and safe for everybody is.
Yep. Representative Stewart with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for all your work on this bill. You know, part of how I introduced the House version is watching your hard work on this over a number of years. I want to thank you publicly for that work. On the issue of the tax rate, I think it's important to note that it's my understanding that the Department of Taxation has come out and said, look, there's kind of a drafting flaw in issue 2 where there's no real authorizing language for any of this 36% of tax revenue to actually get to the locals. And so they're not receiving it today. That might be an argument. There's pros and cons to initiated statutes, but that might be one of them. And so is it your and the Senate's understanding that unless we do one of these bills that would increase, 20% is obviously more than zero. Current practice today is the municipalities, they're getting zero unless we do something in this bill. Is that your understanding as well?
Chairman of the representative, absolutely. And I'm not sure if that wasn't on purpose, that the writers of this bill did not give an avenue to distribute the funds. It's currently sitting, whatever, 6 months, a year of taxes are sitting in the Department of Taxation. There's no way to distribute those funds. And so this bill, or any bill, is going to have to do that to distribute the funds in the future and hopefully give some guidance to the Department of Tax on what percent and how much and when.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And since I know we're going to talk hemp products a little later, but as you said, you've kind of got 2 bills kind of on the same topic. I wasn't here in 2018, but I've gone back and talked to folks who were. I've looked at some of that debate. And what seems to have occurred is we had a process where the legislature said, hey, let's let hemp farmers, sell hemp products, make clothes, make rope, make whatever that you can do with this product. And then we kind of drove a tank through that loophole and said, well, we're going to sell, 420 drinks and Delta 8 and have 9 smoke shops in Circleville, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now the argument seems to be, well, because we've driven the tank through that loophole so effectively, we couldn't possibly, go backwards and try to correct that oversight. What is your I know you've said that you want to tackle both, but in your view, what is the rationale for saying that a intoxicating hemp product should have to go through a dispensary?
Chairman of the representative, well, I will take blame because the original hemp bill was my bill in 2018 with Senator Hill. And we never talked about any of this CBD and hemp and everything. We talked about industrial hemp to make car parts and clothing and different things like that. And so the discussion, we knew that the CBD oils that people were using for arthritis and stuff were products that were made out of hemp. And so we really didn't think of it. And if I knew what I know now, back in 2018, when we initially passed the hemp bill, I believe we should have put them in the dispensaries because it's intoxicating. And it's confusing and very complicated is that often these things are sold and they are not intoxicating in the form that they're sold, but many of them, when they are combusted, the heating process actually turns the chemical into something else, and it does become intoxicating. And the other thing that gets along with hemp is the synthetic things that they make in a lab that are intoxicating, the Delta 9s in things, and that is what we're trying to do. And so to finish answering your question, they're intoxicating things that are made out of THC, in my opinion, in the Senate bill, should be in a dispensary because that's where intoxicating THC in other places in the state.
Follow-up? No. Representative Mohammed with a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for this bill. I wanted to ask you regarding the expungement provision of this bill, and it's a question that I asked Representative Stewart for his testimony as well. The current language of this bill requires that the individual file a request for expungement, pay $50 and go to a hearing. Last GA, Representative Isaacson and I and Rep. Seitz worked on a bill, a streamlined process where it would be the clerk of courts that initiates that process. We met with several different clerk of courts. We were getting positive feedback. And this goes to the question that Rep. Isaacson was asking as well regarding the will of the voters. So I guess my question is, would you be open to an amendment where the only thing that would be changing essentially is who initiates the process? Instead of requiring an individual to locate the county where they have the conviction, it'd be the clerk of courts doing a search of their file to notify that individual. All the other provisions stay the same. They still have to get a hearing. Prosecutor gets notified, victims get notified, everything else stays the same. It would just be that initiating process. Would that be something that you'd be open to?
Well, Chairman of the Representative, learned in my time in the General Assembly to always say, yes, I'm open to any suggestions. And that said, but yes, the thought of President McCauley in the Senate is there needs to be something active that someone does to get their expungement. There's a concern that there's other convictions in other counties. Who's going to make, I think it's simple. If a person has one conviction for a minor marijuana, but do they have other offenses? Do they have, how do we delineate those to the one person or the other person that's convicted 5 times, or they have a higher percent? But certainly would be open to see what we can do because, there's a lot of marijuana convictions that are preventing people from getting housing and jobs and things like that. And part of the bill is to break down those barriers now that it's legal.
One follow-up, yeah. Thank you. So you are open to that, and I'll be drafting an amendment to that effect as well. And really the goal is that, as you mentioned, Senator, you did mention that if there are other offenses that are aligned, there's going to be hearing and that's going to be determined. So of course, the goal is really that notification process, because as you indicated, there are a lot of folks who do have a criminal conviction for marijuana who are unaware, and that's impacting their employment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the legislation, and thank you for coming in front of the committee today. So I have 2 major concerns. I brought this up to Representative Stewart when he introduced this bill. The first one is about the transportation piece of marijuana in line 1840. It makes it unlawful to transport, marijuana unless it's in original packaging unopened. And I think that's kind of going to open the door for individuals to get criminal offenses for having marijuana in their possession, even though marijuana, unlike alcohol, when it's in an open container, is not readily consumable in its original plant form. So maybe we could add some language in there that, it can't be in a readily usable form such as edibles or any other format that could be easily used like pre-rolls or anything like that. I think the mere transportation of adult use cannabis shouldn't be prohibited. You shouldn't have to know. You should put it in the trunk or behind the back seat. I think that can be a point of easy criminalization. But one of my concerns with the way it's drafted is I don't see a penalty section for that. In 3796.062, where we list the prohibitions, I don't see a penalty section for it. In the other penalty section where it talks about being charged with misdemeanor 1, it only points to 3796.062 and not 06 or 06 and not 062. So if I could get a little bit, maybe I'm missing it. Is there a penalty section for .062 in the bill?
I don't have it in front of me, but I'll assume that you're right. So maybe we'll go back and look at that.
Follow up?
Sure.
The other concern that I've always had, and that's because I practice in this area, is I like the changes to home grow. But the concern with allowing people to take home grow marijuana outside of the home is that any marijuana in the state of Ohio now can be classified essentially as home grow when it's in a person's possession. So that's kind of legalizing the possession of street grown marijuana. And there's another statute we have in our state that says marijuana that's sprayed with fentanyl is not going to be treated like a fentanyl related compound. It's going to be treated as though it's marijuana. So there can be marijuana on our streets that is intentionally laced with fentanyl to give it a stronger effect on our kids. And there's no way to criminalize it in the way the bill is drafted. So would you consider what I've envisioned is that if you want to grow in your home, fine, you need to consume it in your home. If you want to take it outside of your home, you need to have a medical marijuana license in order to have homegrown marijuana on your possession outside of your home. And that allow for people to be able to make that choice. Would you be open to a discussion on that so we can make sure that we criminalize, actual black market marijuana in the state of Ohio instead of just kind of giving it permission under this bill?
Chairman, to the representative, that's an interesting, complex issue, and certainly would look into that. The people to be able to move marijuana is a technical thing, and I go to my practice of medicine. Somebody comes in the emergency room, everybody tells me they have it's medical marijuana. I'm like, no, I can look on the high automatic reporting system. It's not, and so to be able to transport it and move it around is an important subject not to let people. I'm not sure getting a license is the best way, but as you know, many of the recreational users in the state of Ohio is rather resistant to get any type of license or identify that they actually consume it, but would certainly look at any provision that you would have.
Good. All right, Representative Sonnenberg with a question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Senator, thank you for your bill here. And obviously between the hemp and the cannabis industries, there are changes that need to be made in our state, certainly, as we move forward. So I appreciate your work in this area. In regard to the home grow, and your bill cuts the limit from 12 to 6, how do you reconcile that with, you had said earlier in your testimony, if you grow it better, good for you. And we don't limit the number of gas stations or drug stores, grocery stores. And that your hope would be that we do get to more deregulation in the future. So if that's your hope, why then at this point cut the home grow in half?
Chairman of the representative, a lot of things in this bill is also, and there's a lot of discussion about the tax, is to prevent the illicit market. And so, what I've been told by experts or whatever, that one plant, if grown properly a year, will produce 600 joints a year. And so in the initiated ballot system, 6 a person, 3,600 joints a year, that's 10 joints a day. As not being a consumer of marijuana, that just seems an extremely large amount that if you smoke even 4 joints a day, you then have 6 that would be put into the illicit market. So, Representative Stewart's bill has 12, this has 6 per family. But if you look at the ballot initiative, 6 for one person in the house, 6 for the other, but law enforcement could not enforce the law till it's over 23. That bar just seems absurd. So either 6 or 12, somewhere in between, I think is reasonable amount, but it is to prevent the illicit market that people go out and sell, because then you have, at least if you go to the dispensary, it's safe. It doesn't have fentanyl in it, doesn't have pesticides, doesn't have mold, and it makes it safe and cuts down on the illicit market.
Follow-up?
Yes, thank you. Understood. Just regarding the revenue sharing and the taxation, the cities that allowed dispensaries did so knowing that they would expect 36% of the 10% in perpetuity, I believe. And they've obviously budgeted and forecasted future city budgets based on that expected income. So do you think, changing it, I would argue that once again, we as the state are being a bad partner to our local governments, our local communities, a trend that really goes back to 2011 when we cut the local government fund in half. So do you think cutting in the middle of the deal here, the deal's already, they're expecting this, their budgets have been forecasted and changed based on the 36%. Do you think we can really look ourselves in the mirror and say we're being a good partner to our local communities by changing this in the middle of the game here? Thank you.
Chairman of the representative, going back to a previous question, what did the voters know? If they didn't, they should have known they were voting to put it in a revised code. Knowing that, and the local jurisdiction should have known it was being voted, and they had at a point that we could put it at 0 at any moment. That's what the people that voted for it, and that's what the local jurisdiction. So I have no problem with changing it. What percent and how long is up to debate, but I don't think there's a problem with it because it's in the revised code. Everybody knew that when they voted, or they should have, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Understood. Thank you.
Representative Odioso with a question.
Thank you, Senator Huffman. Thank you, Chair. I'm most concerned at this moment about what the Senate bill does to the chain of distribution. And let me be precise. How does this bill change the distribution from cultivator to processor to dispensary for the smaller cultivators, for the eliminating tier 3? I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, as it exists now, since the law has been passed by the voters, to after this bill, what is going to be the changes from this bill of the chain between cultivator, processor, and dispensary?
I'm not really understanding the question you're trying to,
I'll
the
try
question you're
again.
trying to get to. If you
Well,
can help.
I'm trying to get at, in particular, the smaller cultivators. Will the smaller cultivators' ability to cultivate and process and get product to the dispensaries be changed by this bill? And what is your understanding of the current chain?
Chairman to the representative, I would have to dig deep into it. I don't really think it changes much. There can be an integrated system where the cultivator may own a dispensary, some own a processor up and down the line. Some of them just own one, some own 2. So they should still be able to, but I've also heard that the smaller ones, smaller processors are often is finding difficult to find product to actually process because of the integration going up and down. So I don't think it changes anything that was already set up, but I'd have to look in more detail.
Thank you.
Yes.
Representative Williams with the question.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick follow-up. It was brought to my attention. Would you be open to also prohibiting the combustion of hemp in public? Otherwise, without officers being able to have a distinguishing characteristic between hemp and marijuana, they're very similar in odor. Officers would lose reasonable articulable suspicion to investigate the criminal conduct of burning marijuana in public. So would you consider adding hemp to the prohibition on combustion in public as well?
Chairman, the representative, absolutely. For the members, a marijuana plant looks very similar to a hemp plant, and it almost takes an expert to distinguish the two. And you're right, the smell and other products, including the cannabinoids and the CBD and estradiols are very similar, and the smell is very similar. So yes, would be open to, that's a very good suggestion.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you.
This concludes the first hearing on Senate Bill 56. I'd now like to call up House Bill 160 for its second hearing. Here to provide proponent testimony, first is Rick Carfagna on behalf of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, and when you're ready, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Matthews, Ranking Member Isaacson, members of the House Judiciary Committee. Appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 160. I'm Rick Carfagna, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the Ohio Chamber. We are the state's leading business advocate. We represent over 8,000 companies that do business in Ohio, and our mission is to aggressively champion free enterprise, economic competitiveness, and growth for the benefit of all Ohioans. With the passage of issue 2, the OCC understands that this is new ground for everyone with a statute that is complex and full of nuanced policy measures. Because issue 2 passed through an initiated statute, the General Assembly now has the discretion to make any necessary statutory adjustments governing the use of recreational marijuana in its emerging marketplace. Of all the provisions that are targeted for revision within House Bill 160, we remain focused on 2 main areas of the broadest applicability and highest priority for the statewide business community. Those are employer workplace protections and ensuring private property rights. The provisions that are found here in House Bill 160 also mirror those found in Senate Bill 56, as you just heard from Senator Huffman, that the Ohio Chamber likewise supports. So first, with regards to employer workplace protections, we appreciate sponsor Representative Stewart's inclusion of 2 key chamber requests which strengthen Ohio's employer protection laws to account for recreational marijuana usage. First, House Bill 160 addresses a provision that is already in Ohio's medical marijuana employer protection law, but not included in issue 2. This provision, ORC 3796.28C, which was adopted in the budget during the 134th General Assembly, specifies that employers do not violate any anti-discrimination laws when they're enforcing drug-free workplace policies. Accordingly, the simple deletions of medical now expands this provision to apply to all forms of marijuana, regardless of whether it is medical or recreational. Second, House Bill 160 also now clarifies that any person discharged from employment because of their use of marijuana, not just medical, is discharged for just cause and ineligible for unemployment benefits if the use was in violation of the employer's drug-free or zero-tolerance policies. The Chamber is grateful for these critical changes and for other efforts to strengthen Ohio's employer protection laws, to reinforce employers' abilities to maintain drug-free workplaces, zero-tolerance policies, and the flexibility to conduct employee testing. Next, with regards to ensuring private property rights, the Chamber believes that the issue 2 statute is ambiguous as to what extent private property owners will be able to prohibit people from using, possessing, displaying, or transferring marijuana on their properties apart from existing bans on smoking. The Chamber firmly believes that publicly accessible places such as shopping malls, restaurants and bars, amusement parks, and other large areas under private ownership should be able to limit cannabis use, possession, and transfer beyond the state's existing smoking ban. To address this ambiguity, we believe the best way to achieve this outcome is to outlaw public use, and House Bill 160 largely achieves this by limiting the smoking, combustion, and vaporization of recreational marijuana to private residences. Furthermore, these revisions also align with the Chamber's request to empower rental property owners to ban the use of marijuana products on their properties. So in closing, we understand that creating this new industry that was formerly illegal involves layers of complexity and consequences. It is equally important that we honor the vote of the people and administer this new program in the most socially responsible manner. And we think that the state can do both. We applaud the work and the initiative that has been shown by both Representative Stewart and Senator Huffman to revise the issue 2 statute. The Ohio Chamber of Commerce supports the efforts under both House Bill 160 and Senate Bill 56 to ensure the safe and responsible usage of recreational marijuana. We encourage your affirmative vote on both pieces of legislation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Ranking Member Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair, and Mr. Carpagna, thank you for being here and for your testimony. I have some questions around the workplace protections that you described. I agree that we've got work to do to sort of clear this up and make sure that everyone's on the same page. But in the interest of growing the workforce, which I know is hugely important to the Chamber and certainly important to the legislature, how do you think about a situation where if there's randomized testing at an employer, or if the being caught with marijuana can count as just cause for firing, if someone uses marijuana on the 1st of the month and they're at work 3 weeks later on the 21st and they get a random test, they're not impaired. It was 3 weeks ago, but the test shows that they have marijuana, THC in their system, and that's cause for removal from the workplace. Are you worried both that will hinder workforce because people won't want those jobs in an environment where what they're doing is perfectly legal, So it'll make it harder to hire and harder to retain. Like, how do you square the need for workforce with the fact that behavior they engaged in on the weekend in their home on the 1st of the month was perfectly legal, with the fact that that is now just cause to be fired? Like, how is that pro-workforce development?
Sure. Chair Thomas, Ranking Member Isaacson, couple of points to make. First off, I believe that the workplace is already, employers are largely responding to that already. They understand they need all hands on deck. They have been relaxing a lot of their workplace policies. Many are not even testing anymore. So I think that employers realize we need the workforce. If it's something that we can either look the other way, or we don't think that a positive test is going to impair our operations or put us at liability, they are relaxing a lot of those measures on their own, I would argue. Next, I would argue that these provisions that we're talking about apply only when an employer has actually taken the initiative to create a zero tolerance policy, a drug-free workplace, where they have to actually go in and create a policy, communicate that to their employees. It is understood between the employer and the employee that this is the expectation. It's not something where if this were to be signed into law tomorrow, somebody comes in and there's an accident and they test positive. Well, if you didn't have something on the books talking about these expectations, then it doesn't apply. You can't avail yourself of these protections. So that is something I think that the employer needs to think through if they want to institute that kind of a policy that is going to have the kind of outcome that's going to result in somebody being terminated. And then finally, I would say too that, and I would agree that, you know, the testing is not on par with that of alcohol. You know, I can go out on my lunch break and have 3 Manhattans and come back to work, and the employer thinks that I'm impaired. And if I get a breathalyzer test, they can measure my blood alcohol level. To your point, you can't do that with marijuana. So if somebody goes out and consumes an edible on their lunch break or smokes a joint on their lunch break on their own time, they come back to work and they're impaired and I test them, they're going to come back positive. However, you know, were they positive because they just now consumed it, or are they positive because they consumed it a week or 2 ago? So I think, and we would support finding ways to improve technologies for testing to get more accurate tests. But until that day comes, anybody that's going to test positive on the job site is going to claim that they took something weeks ago because they have no other way to prove that. So we would prefer, especially with a lot of these jobs that are going to be coming that are in advanced manufacturing, a lot of precision type work, a lot of work that's going to involve heavy machinery. You know, we want to err on the side of employers being able to police these things and to make sure that we are ensuring, you know, safety on the work sites and that people are not impaired.
Follow.
Thank you for that. I get the thinking, certainly. My main sort of follow-up, I think there's a lot of room to sort of create laws and regulations around, you know, someone assuming if there's an accident and they're found to have THC in their system, then maybe then they assume the risk as the employee, but only in the case of an accident would you test? I think there's something there, because the real concern here is that they're ineligible for unemployment benefits. So how do you protect against someone who, again, took an edible legally in their home on the weekend, and then 3 weeks later, their employer wants to fire them for whatever reason, knows that they engage in, or takes a bet because of the huge amount of people who engage in this legal activity,
Sure.
does a random drug test, finds that they have THC in their system. That person now doesn't deserve unemployment benefits, right? So how do we protect against that kind of abuse of the system? Because fundamentally, we do want to make sure that people have basic rights protected, and certainly access to unemployment benefits would be in the category of things we want to just make sure that people, you know, they've earned those, they've worked for those, the state has determined that workers should have them. Why would getting high in your basement 3 weeks prior, why would that be a legitimate reason not to get unemployment benefits?
Chair Thomas, Ranking Member Isaacson, Again, if there's a way to create some sort of a separation to account for those instances, I think we'd be willing to work through that. Once again, until the testing improves, I have no way of knowing whether that employee consumed it 3 weeks ago or consumed it 3 minutes ago. I mean, a simple test is going to show that you're either positive or you're not. And, once again, if an employer is looking to cull his workforce of certain individuals, they do that. I mean, once again, I think that we have an economy right now where you can ill afford to leave talent on, push talent away or create a workforce or create a workplace where people are either disincentivized to continue working there or they don't want to come work for you in the first place.
Representative Williams with the question.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to testify today. So, when I worked for the railroad as a subcontractor and I drove vehicles for a living, I had a back injury and doctors wanted to put me on prescriptions, but my employer said, you can't have opiates in your system while you're at work. That's a legal prescription that if I would have had in my system at the time, and whether I got hurt or drug tested, I would have, and was found to be positive and fired, I would be ineligible for for unemployment. So do you think that recreational users of marijuana should get higher levels of protection for unemployment than people that are injured on the job and maybe taking a Percocet or a Vicodin that's prescribed by their doctors? I mean, those opiates do cause a safety concern for employers that individuals have those in their systems and they don't get protection. Do you think we should give extra protection to individuals because they want to use a substance that's legal to consume, but their employer has clearly indicated they can't have it in their system while they're at work?
Chair Thomas, Representative Williams, we do not. And once again, we're not asking to break new ground with these asks. These are already provisions that are in current law and have been in law for years now, applicable to medical marijuana, as you have indicated. We are just simply asking that we treat medical marijuana and recreational marijuana in the same manner. And also with alcohol, as was advertised by issue 2. And again, I will just reiterate that this is if you are in violation. These rights you can only avail yourself of as an employer if that employee is running afoul of a stated workplace policy related to drug-free or zero tolerance policies. That was something that obviously was communicated to you, that you made a conscious decision regarding, the medication that you had the right to not take because you did not want to run afoul of that workplace policy. So there should not be any surprises here if something is been communicated between management and staff.
Representative Sonnenberg with question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And Mr. Cavagna, thanks for being here today.
Good morning.
I know it seems like you wanted to outlaw public use totally. That's what your statement, it says. And I think we've all become, unfortunately, too accustomed to being in public places where you can smell the smell of marijuana over the last several years. It's one thing if you're going to a rock concert, we all sort of grew up doing that and you would smell it. But it's another when you're walking into, let's say, a mall, which I have one in my district, and every time I walk into that mall, it smells. So it is a little offensive and it's too much. But do you think there's a middle ground instead of limiting it to just private residences, or in the case of an edible, edibles are different. They obviously don't smell. Is that something that you'd be open to allowing public use of? Yeah.
Chair Thomas, Representative Sonnenberg, I would argue that I think this is a middle ground. And for a couple of reasons. I mean, first off, this doesn't apply unless I'm reading it wrong. I don't think this language applies to edibles. This is smoking, combustion, and vaporization of recreational marijuana. I don't believe it applies to edibles. So I would argue right now, if I want to go to Polaris Mall, which is 5 minutes from my house, and go shop and consume an edible product or have a gummy while I'm walking around, I can do it. What I can't do is I cannot walk around with my mug of coffee that has some Crown Royal in it and enjoy that at the same time. So we are not regulating cannabis to the same degree as we are alcohol, as was advertised. So this, I believe, is a really good start. outlawing, again, smoking, combustion, vaporization of products. Doesn't touch edibles. We would like to see it go further, but I'm content with what has been produced both in the Senate. It has been voted out of the Senate in the last General Assembly by a bipartisan vote. We agree with what has been proposed here under House Bill 160, excuse me.
Thank you.
Mohammed with a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Krafania, for that. Just to follow up on Rep. Sennenberg's question, my question goes along with what Rep. Sennenberg was saying, and this is regarding, again, rental properties. I think it's the biggest loophole that certainly, that I'm concerned about, and I think a lot of Ohioans are concerned about as well. I think you mentioned shopping malls, restaurants. Those are public spaces that are used together. It's understandable that certainly you don't want to be at a restaurant and someone sitting next to you smoking marijuana. I can understand that perspective. But when you add rental properties being excluded from a personal home, that certainly leaves a big loophole for any landlord to add into their lease that you can't use marijuana. Does that not negate sort of the intent of the voters for issue 2?
Chair Thomas, Representative Mohammed, I mean, we want to empower private property owners, including landlords, to be able to. Now, again, that's something that would have to be incorporated into the lease, into the agreement. So that is a contractual relationship that I think the tenant would know when they are renewing a lease, when they are moving into a new place, that is a condition of living there. It is a private property, and if somebody says, I don't want marijuana, consumed, smoked, combusted, vaporized on my property, we think that we should respect that.
One follow-up. Yeah. And I understand that perspective too, but the concern is when there's no exception for rental properties, the issue is often this is also a financial issue because a lot of the folks that are younger or don't have the finances to own their own home are renting. So, I mean, again, I asked the question again. I mean, I understand the argument that you're making,
Yes.
but it is a big loophole. When Ohioans were voting, that's not what they voted for. So the concern is it just leads to a situation where many millions of Ohioans may not be able to have access to, smoke in their own home. Again, this is their rental property. So, I mean, would that be something that maybe likely we can discuss more?
Chair Thomas, Representative Mohammed, I mean, look, we're always willing to discuss more, but I would argue that they are not smoking in their own home. They're smoking in somebody else's home. If there is a way that they could consume it outside on a patio or consume it somewhere that does not run afoul of whatever's in the stated lease, then, God bless them. We don't ascribe any problems with that. And, we're always willing to talk.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next for proponent testimony is David Mahan from the Center for Christian Virtue. Welcome to committee and please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Matthews, Ranking Member Isaacson, and the esteemed members of the House Judiciary Committee. My name is David Mahan. I'm the Policy Director for the Center for Christian Virtue, Ohio's largest Christian public policy organization. Today, I'm testifying in support of HB 160, which places much needed regulation specifically on extremely dangerous intoxicating hemp-derived THC products. It's been said that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. This statement is often used when we are counseling someone about the need to change bad habits or warning them about jumping into another terrible relationship. The decision surrounding the subject of this legislation has much to do with both. Ohio has been flirting with the addiction for profit marijuana industry for nearly a decade. And in 2024, we finally tied the knot. Unfortunately, we have failed to learn from the mistakes of other states as it relates to commercializing illegal narcotics. So now we must begin the process of learning the hard way. Whether the catchword is marijuana, cannabis, hemp, intoxicating hemp, what we are dealing with are products that contain some degree of THC or CBD, both of which can be dangerous to children. The relationship becomes even more dysfunctional when the industry has the ability to cover up the dangers of their products simply by toying with the law, a little chemistry, and semantics. Hemp is a non-intoxicating variant of the cannabis plant and is legally defined as being below 0.3% THC. Chemically modifying hemp can produce intoxicating hemp products that contain the same cannabinoids as adult use marijuana in concentrations high enough to produce psychotic episodes. But with just a simple name and packaging change, intoxicating hemp products such as Delta 8 can be sold in convenience stores without any of the age or advertising restrictions that regulate adult use products. Even the term marijuana is deceptive these days. The naturally occurring plant that many giggle about smoking in the 60s was only 3 to 5% THC, some 2% THC, and even that was enough to cause intoxication in some users. Today, genetically altered plants can be as high as 35% THC, and the edibles and concentrates can be upwards of 95% THC. Law right now says it can be 90% THC in the state of Ohio. While these types of games and loopholes can no doubt be very lucrative to the white-collar dope dealers, they have unfortunately proven harmful and even fatal for children. According to America's Poison Centers, the rate of Delta 8 THC exposures reported to poison centers across the country increased by 82% just from 2021 to 2022. The fact is that most of us are used to thinking about when it comes to marijuana no longer exists today. However, every time states start thinking about breaking up this codependent relationship with big marijuana, or at least getting counseling, the industry keeps trying to keep us giggling and stuck in the good old days before teen cannabis use disorders and THC-related ER visits were a serious issue as they are today across the country. The conversation has to change. And if we are still thinking of marijuana as simply a gateway drug, our thinking must change in order to prevent many of the devastating impacts that the marijuana industry has had across the nation. For example, in Colorado, who commercialized the drug in 2012, the #1 substance found in completed teen suicides is THC. Twice that is alcohol. But it took them a decade of kids killing themselves before they knew enough to do anything about it. However, after years of watching this industry and these drugs decimate state after state, Ohio no longer has the luxury of claiming ignorance. That said, while we support the efforts made in HB 160 to regulate a widely overlooked sector of the addiction for profit marijuana industry, CCV would like to suggest 2 common sense amendments. Based upon the lessons Colorado learned the hard way. 1, detailed research and reporting legislation monitoring the impacts of high potency THC related products, such as Colorado's HB 21-1317. And secondly, capping THC limits to at least that of the plants in Ohio, which is 35%. Even the Netherlands caps THC potency at 15%. As Ohioans are already struggling with epidemic rates of addiction, historically high crime, and a mental health crisis, how does one come to the conclusion that big marijuana could actually be trusted to regulate themselves? Again, I would like to thank the sponsor of HB 160 for the great first step of regaining some sense of sanity around this issue. I would also invite you all to learn more about marijuana and the intoxicating hemp piece of this by listening to a podcast, the Narrative Podcast at CCV, recently recorded by Dr. Ken Finn, who advises state legislatures and the United Nations on this subject. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Looks like you're getting off easy.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you. There are 2 written-only testimonies on your iPad for your consideration as well. This concludes the second hearing for House Bill 160. Now I'd like to call up House Bill 198 for its second hearing. First up to provide sponsor testimony is Laura Miller on behalf of the Ohio Council of Retail Merchants. Welcome to committee. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. I know Vice Chairman is not here, but Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the committee, thanks for this opportunity to
Representative Mohammed, Representative Odioso,
Here.
Representative Olslager, Representative Plummer, Representative Stewart,
Here.
Representative Swearingen, Representative Sinnenberg,
Here.
Representative Timms, Representative Williams.
Here.
We have a quorum present and we'll continue as a full committee. The minutes from the previous meeting are on your iPads. Please review the minutes. Are there any objections to the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. A reminder that in order to record video or audio, this committee must submit an AV request form to my legislative aide, Teddy. All the supporting documents and testimony today can be found on your iPads. If the public wishes to be informed about upcoming hearings, please visit the Judiciary Committee website. I'd now like to call up Substitute Senate Bill 56 for its second hearing. I'd like to recognize Rep. Stewart for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to accept Sub-Bill L-136-1413-3 for Substitute Senate Bill 56.
The sub-bill is in order and can be found on your iPads. Rep. Stewart, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, your staff. I want to thank Representative Callender for being involved in this process and giving a lot of feedback. I know he's going to speak in a little bit. Not trying to say that he agrees with everything, but we're certainly making some progress in the right direction, I believe. I want to thank Rep. Odioso, who's been very helpful on some of the local government issues here. What we're doing is essentially taking House Bill 160 and putting that into Senate Bill 56. We've also largely taken Senate Bill 86 and put that into Senate Bill 56 as well. And so the cumulative result, I want to go over just a few of the major changes that we've made here. We do in this sub-bill give the Division of Marijuana Control the authority to increase potency by rule above 70%. I believe this is in one of the Senate versions of the bill, and this would be present here as well. We would say that a licensed dispensary may deliver, transfer, and sell adult use or medical marijuana to other license holders. Hearing the feedback about low-dose THC-infused beverages, this bill now includes the provisions of Senate Bill 86 that would allow the sale of 5 milligram or less THC-infused beverages at retail rather than solely being available in dispensaries. The bill would permit the sharing of intoxicating marijuana and hemp products between adults on private property in the way that you're able to use. So if you're able to use on a property, you would be able to share with other folks as well. We do have an exemption for public use, a limited exemption for outdoor concert venues that otherwise have a policy to allow smoking and other vape products on the premises. With regard to taxation, we make clear that the 10% adult use marijuana tax also applies to intoxicating hemp products. Factoring in that we're now going to have THC-infused beverages, we have a $3.50 gallon per gallon tax on THC-infused beverages, which matches the Senate's version as well. We have removed the 3-day mandatory minimum sentence for use of marijuana by passengers in a vehicle. That no longer exists. On the local government funding piece, we have expanded the marijuana community fund tax share, which in the original bill was 20% for 5 years. And I will again say the Senate's version of the bill was 0%. The governor's introduced version of the bill was 0%. House Bill 160 started out at 20% for 5 years. We have increased that to 25% over 7 years. We've also increased the distance that will be between dispensaries from a half mile to a mile. With regard to licensing and law enforcement, we have the Ohio Investigative Unit being tasked with enforcing compliance with marijuana and hemp laws. We've also increased from House Bill 160 the number of allowable dispensaries in the state from 350 to 400. And those are the general high points of the sub-bill. We believe this is a step in the direction of listening to a lot of the committee testimony that we've heard, a lot of the interested party meetings that we've had. Obviously, we're still in committee, and so review the bill with us, and we understand there may be other amendments sought, but I think this is getting us to a single vehicle that the Senate could hopefully concur, or maybe have a short conference committee on, one vote to take rather than having 3 or 4 different bills. So I would appreciate if the committee would accept the sub-bill and let us continue our work.
Thank you, Representative Stewart. I'd like to call on Representative Callender to speak on the amendment.
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
not-
on the substitute bill.
The acceptance sub-bill, yes, correct. I'm not going to object to it, and I'm going to ask that we accept that today with the very clear understanding that there will be some amendments drafted and considered at the next meeting. And would like to thank everyone for working very diligently and with high integrity and very direct discussions on some of the issues that we are not on the same page. Representative Stewart, your staff, Colin from my office, the chairman's office, the speaker's office, everyone on the House side that has acted in good faith on getting to where we are. This bill, which we got at 9:51, so an hour and 9 minutes ago, an hour and 10 minutes ago, appears to be a significant step forward. A number of the things that Representative Stewart outlined are things that we've discussed over the last few weeks, and I'm greatly heartened to see that they were seriously considered. I have 9 issues that are still kind of outstanding or partially outstanding. And I want to go over those very quickly because those are the areas that I'll be working on amendments to. And if there's others that I'm missing that folks want to bring to our attention, there's not much time to do so. So in the act of expedience and for the committee members to know kind of where my head's at and the heads of some of the advocates are at, for transparency's sake, here are the items that are of concern in no particular order. The local government fund, while I certainly applaud moving from 0 to 25% of the 10%, and for 7 years versus 0, we have a number of municipalities who went out on a political limb, often with great discussion, to create an environment for an emerging industry that's somewhat controversial to emerge. And in doing so, one of the considerations those mayors, managers, council members, or trustees took into account was the additional funding stream and how that could keep them from having to go back to the ballot for a sales tax increase or a property tax increase to maintain services that they already had under a tightening economy. We've all heard from them. So I'm very concerned that we deviate away from that 36% that they would get from those local entities. We're discussing some details around that. I appreciate 25% is a lot better than where it started, but I think those municipalities negotiated in good faith with entities coming in, and I think I think we have a moral obligation to let them get what was a component of their negotiations. Second item, criminalization, recriminalization. I have not scoured this newest draft yet. In fact, I think the sponsor hasn't fully, again, we've had an hour and 8 minutes to review 400 pages. It looks like a lot of those issues were addressed in this, but that's a concern. We will look at those. The one thing that we can say about issue 2 when it passed that everyone is in agreement to, there may be different reasons that were the primary vote motivation, but certainly everybody that voted yes expected to be able to possess or consume cannabis without risk of going to jail if it was in a personal quantity. So some of the recriminalization efforts we saw in earlier drafts, we're going to try to amend to where that no longer exists. And this draft may have taken care of a good portion of those. So I appreciate the work on that. Sharing, that again is addressed here. We haven't had a chance to go through the details. But again, I think that's something that was, the people that voted yes said, yes, if you're having a backyard barbecue and someone, rather than having alcohol, is going to pull out the traditional nomenclature, a joint, they're going to pass it to the person who's putting the barbecue sauce on the burgers while they're flipping them or whatever. And we want to make sure that that is something that is not, again, criminalized, because I think clearly that is part of legalization. The concentration. This version of the bill moves it up to, I think, 70% but the rules could make it more. I'm concerned that there's a lot of products out there now today that are in the 80 to 90% range, tinctures in particular, but also concentrates that are made by the grow sites to transport to processors for them to turn into, to use as an ingredient in things that when the consumer sees it are a much lower concentration. But I think it's important that we have 90 as the floor and raise it by rule if need be. And I think that's consistent with actual current usage. The private property owner rights, I think we've seen, my quick glance at this bill looks like that's addressed fairly well, but there may be some details on private property owner rights. We want to make sure that a private property owner, a business owner, a homeowner, a landlord can say, you can't smoke on my property. I think that's their absolute right. But the contra to that is if they want smoking, they should also be allowed to say, you can, as long as it doesn't violate other health and safety policies like the general no smoking policies. And that includes bars and entertainment venues. This version addresses some of the entertainment venues, but not the bars that also have an outdoor concert area or an outdoor smoking area. And I think that's of critical importance. And I know a number of folks here have businesses in their districts that would be adversely affected by that. Speaking of bar owners and bars, if we're going to have the beverages allowed up to a certain milligrams, I think it's important that you be able to purchase them not just for carry out only, but at a venue, or whether that's a bar or a concert venue. There's a lot of folks who don't drink for various health reasons, that would give them a beverage. And I've heard from a lot of bar owners that they've seen a statistically significant reduction in sales since issue 2 passed. I think this would allow them to gain back some of that market share. And I think it's kind of silly to say you can buy something for takeout, pour it in a flask and sneak it in versus actually buying it at the bar. So I'm going to have an amendment to ask for that. The limits on licenses, again, 400 is better than the 350. I'd like to hear from the people in the field what their thoughts on that. As long as it can be increased by rule, the 400 may be okay. So I thank you for that. The orphaned processors, to use a shorthand, that's the processors who have a standalone non-vertically integrated business that have had some complaints that they have not been able to or could be cut off from access to supplies. That's an issue that's still under discussion. I think the members of the committee probably need to hear more on that issue from folks. And the final issue is the transportation issue. We need to look at how it was addressed in here specifically. It may be adequate, but that couples with the recriminalization. We want to make sure that we're not creating criminals where we have something that was designed to make people make a certain type of conduct, consuming or possessing THC containing products, to decriminalize it and using that as a chance to create new criminal penalties or new crimes. So on the transportation side scenario, we want to look at that very, very closely. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting me go over that list to at least from my perspective, as someone who's been involved very much in this issue for several decades now, to express, thanks for where this is, but also my reservations and areas that both for committee members and the general public to expect some discussion over the next 7 days and potentially some amendments or an omnibus amendment next week.
Thank you,
Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Callender. I recognize Representative Williams to speak to the substitute bill.
Thank you, Chairman. I applaud the progress that we made on this bill. I just have one clarifying question. On the host community cannabis fund, I know we're extending it to 7 years. Is that 7 years from the effective date that portion of the taxes just disappears, or is it 7 days from the point that a host community brings a dispensary into the community? It's like if there's a new host community that currently doesn't have a dispensary, 8 years from now decides to bring in a dispensary, is their funds going to be allocated to that host community, or they would just be left out of because that section expired?
Representative Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to the rep. The intention is that it would be 7 years from whatever date, the effective date of the bill. So if a community waits 5 years to authorize a dispensary, they would have 2 years to receive that revenue as opposed to 7. That's the intention. If after reviewing the bill, you don't think we've captured that, let us know if that's the intention. Obviously, more discussion to be had on that.
Great. All right. The question is, shall the motion be agreed to? Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objection, the sub-bill is accepted. I'd now like to call up House Bill 47 for its 5th hearing. I call on Vice Chair Matthews for a motion.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Thomas, I move to favorably report House Bill 47 out of committee and recommend its passage.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Thomas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Matthews,
Yes.
Ranking Member Isaacson,
Yes.
Representative Callender,
Yes.
Representative Mohammed,
Yes.
Representative Odioso,
Yes.
Representative Olslager,
Yes.
Representative Plummer, Representative Stewart,
Yes.
Representative Swearingen, Representative Sinnenberg,
Yes.
Representative Timms, Representative Williams.
Yes.
With sufficient votes, the bill is favorably reported. The roll will stay open until noon today. This concludes the 5th and final hearing for House Bill 47. I'd now like to call up House Bill 195 for its 1st hearing.
There's
Eventually found not guilty conduct that under the performances that walking
as required by
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Thomas,
Here.
Ranking Member Isaacson. Here. Representative Callender,
Good morning, I'm here.
Representative Matthews. Here. Representative Mohammed. Here. Representative Odioso,
Here.
Representative Olslager, Representative Plummer, Representative Stewart,
Here.
Representative Sinnenberg. Here. Representative Timms. Representative Williams.
We have a quorum present and we'll proceed as a full committee. The minutes from the previous meeting are on your iPads. Please review the minutes. Are there any objections to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. A reminder, in order to record audio or video of this committee, you must submit an AV request form to my legislative aide, Mr. Smith. All the supporting documents and testimony can be found on your iPads, If the public wishes to be informed about upcoming hearings, please visit the Judiciary Committee website and sign up to be on the distribution list. We are going to start with House Bill number 203.
Exactly what House
Chair, thanks for committee for having us in. Developers. Not all digital.
Today.
Content online and apps.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Thomas, Vice Chair Matthews, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to testify today. I respectfully oppose the SB 56 sub-bill for the following reasons and offer improvements. We must protect our most vulnerable seniors, veterans, cancer patients, and people like me living with serious health conditions. Medical patients should not be taxed. Removing taxes could help bring back thousands who have left our program. Medical patients should be allowed to smoke cannabis. It makes no sense that adult use consumers can smoke, but patients can't. If THC limits are reduced, high potency products should remain available for medical patients. We must stop criminalizing how cannabis is stored in vehicles. No jail time or fines is needed. Products should be stored where kids or pets cannot reach them, like in a sealed or childproof container. Smell alone should not justify a search from law enforcement. Cannabis consumption spaces are long overdue. If Ohio is considering allowing THC beverages to be sold in bars and restaurants, we should also consider designated areas at these venues where adults can legally smoke cannabis. Just like we have bars for alcohol, cannabis consumers need a safe, legal space to consume. I propose that we establish a system of event-based and venue-specific permits that allow smoking or vaping at approved private events or consumption-friendly businesses. Cannabis event rules need clarity. I propose venue-based and annual event permits issued by the Division of Cannabis Control with clear rules will support legal and safe and successful events. Home growers should be permitted to sell seeds and clones at expos, festivals, and markets. Medical patients should be allowed to grow 12 plants per person, not per household. Selling a small number of clones without license should be permitted. Selling more could require a vendor permit. I propose we rename the Social Equity Program to the Cannabis Opportunity Community Program, or COCP. This program should receive 26% of the adult sales revenue to support licensing, access, job creation, expungement, and community reinvestment. COCP could be managed by the Ohio Department of Development. An additional 10% of adult use sales should support public cannabis education, local testing access, and law enforcement retraining on cannabis laws and Division of Cannabis Control policies. I would like to also launch the Cannabis Public Education Program, or CPEP, with the support and funding of the state of Ohio. CPEP would serve cannabis consumers and non-licensed businesses by providing multi-language, multimedia education to close the gap of public understanding about legal cannabis. Public testing should be offered at health departments so residents can test flower, edibles, or concentrates from any source, reducing the stigma and promoting safety. Ohio voters are frustrated. Many people across the state have different understandings of what is legal and what isn't. When it comes to cannabis, because of public information has been inconsistent, and laws often feel different depending on what city or county you live in. I urge you to attend town halls this summer to connect with voters. If we don't get this right, we can't keep losing to Michigan in football and cannabis. Thank you for your time today. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have or meet with you at another date.
Great, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Simon Dunkel from Ohio Normal. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chair. Take me just a second.
Yeah, no problem.
A little hitch in my get along.
No rush, no problem.
So good morning. Thank you for this opportunity.
My name is Simon Dunkel. I'm Executive Director of Ohio Normal. I've also worked here as an employee in 114th General Assembly for Vern Rife, Betty Black, Merle Shoemaker, Morris Tipton. So I've been here before. What I'd like to see, we've attempted on many levels for many years. I started testifying in 2012 to try to make a connection so that we could do something on this subject. Despite efforts of trying to educate legislators, it never seems to come to fruition. I've gotten to the point where I want to ask you, educate me. Why does it have to be like this? Why do we have to do it this way? When we have the knowledge of 38, 39 other states that have done it. And you hear the governor talk about the Ohio way. And right now the Ohio way is nothing but kind of embarrassing because this isn't this difficult. And with the shell game of bills and places to look for relevant information, whether it's budgets or committees or whatever, it's gotten to be a bit ridiculous because it seems like you don't really want anybody to know. And as much as time as you put into getting input, you don't seem to process that input. I approached Senator Mora's office a year or two ago about the medical program and was told that I was Noah's Arking the bill, which of course infers there's a big problem that they do recognize. And I think that, we need to move forward and get past whatever problems you have with cannabis and its users and get to the point of, let's let the state make the money. Let's let everybody in the system make the money, but we need to cover the consumer. Anti-discrimination law, language, criminal justice reform, and social equity are at the top of the list. And frankly, you need to just sort of stop this process and go back to issue 2 and start from there. Because you've been told by the state, constituents of the state, that that's what they want. And yet you've ignored that and you continue to ignore that. And all you have to do is look at the situation with testimony. You've had insurmountable amounts, I guess, of opponent testimony, 60 or more, and you're adding to that today. Proponent testimony is 10 or 12 or 15. And we seem to exist in a vacuum as opponent testimony speakers, which I'd like to know why that is. Because I've got 50 years working with the plant. I've been trying to get change in Ohio for 15 years, started coming here on this subject in 2012. When you look at things like limiting concentrates to 70%, it takes RSO and FICO basically out of the game for being relevant medications. When it comes to the tax rate and its distribution, that continues to be an issue because the very community that's creating those funds doesn't get any help from those funds. And that needs to be addressed as well. And you also need to allow free and open testing of all products for contamination and quality assurance because you need to follow like the lead of Maine. They found 120 samples through their program. 42% of them were contaminated. And one of them was with a pesticide that creates cyanide gas when the flower is immolated. So that's a problem. And it's better to know and do something than not know and let something happen. Excuse me. We also need to create like DORAs, the drinking areas in public for special events, create CORAs for marijuana. I mean, you take a small area and basically a small building, glass, plastic, whatever, put a large vent filter on it, and then you've got an area where they can use and in public. So you can reduce arrests and reduce public consumption and everybody's happy. But those things need to be considered because if you give us the product and don't give us the right of use, there's no real sense in having it. And lastly, I'd like to point out, that you're kind of in a precarious situation because you're about to be known as one of the largest criminal conspiracies against your own constituents and neighbors in U.S. history. You legalized a commodity, gave access to it, then allowed it to be recriminalized, overpriced, highly taxed, while continuing to make arrests for it, all along providing no support, recourse, or real rights of use for citizens of the state. You've surreptitiously taken advantage of federal law while damaging the very consumers you supposedly rescuing from federal law. Please put the process on hold until we can recognize the will of the voters, issue 2, and not the will of the legislators. The opportunity still exists for you to work with cannabis consumers and advocates. Sarah Coy is here from Athens. She was instrumental in the taco effort down there. You've also got EBTHC, Eric's here, Matt from Civics Cannabis. And like I said, I've got 50 years experience. So, I mean, we can work together. If you can explain to me why it needs to be this way, then I can stop coming and sweating at the podium. Or you guys, or we can explain how this works, why it works, and why I didn't die in 2012 like I was supposed to. So I appreciate it. Anybody has any input or questions? I'm here for you.
Mr. Dunkel, thank you for your testimony.
Sure.
For the record, the substitute bill, the one we're working on, the
Sure.
most latest version is on the Judiciary Committee website.
Mhm.
So it is available there.
Okay.
Are there any questions for Mr. Dunkel? Representative Calendar.
Thank you. As much a comment as a question, I want to thank you for coming in. I'm not going to repeat this for every speaker, but again, thank you all for your participation. As a result of that, there was a substitute bill put in last week that addressed a couple of the issues you talk about. And one of the reasons that it is not up for a vote today is we're still negotiating and working on some amendments to address several of the other issues. So the very specific issues you addressed have been being worked on or will be addressed in the next week or two. So for all of you that are here testifying, I want to thank you. You've made a difference and it's going to make a much better product. And I'm optimistic that you may not be perfectly happy, but you're going to say, this is okay when it comes up.
Well, I
So
appreciate
thank you for your participation.
Well, I appreciate you.
And good to see you again.
And good to see you. Thank you for your support. I appreciate it.
Good to-
Great.
Any other questions?
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. And I apologize for not having everything about Sub-Bill 56 on my mind, but well, 4 days and hips that just seem to like to go their own way. It gets to be an issue. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Our next witness is Eric Whitehead.
Yeah. Is Teddy here? Hey, Teddy, the coalition really, the Ohio Cannabis Consumer Coalition really appreciates you. Those pamphlets I was talking about. Those are called zines. It's short for mini magazine. It's a pamphlet with some basic educational content on it. And sorry, let me start over. Chair, members of the committee, thank you all for coming here. Honestly, though, it's a shame that I have to see you all again under these circumstances. But as Calendar has pointed out, when duty calls, this community answers. 40 more testimonies today is pretty impressive if you ask me. I did want to thank many of you here on this committee today. I've been inspired by many of you. Calendar, I know we had a little bit of a heated discussion last time, but you did inspire me. I did bring in some of my own homegrown joints today. Unfortunately, I can't test those because I don't have access to the labs. Some of the labs have actually written to the DCC to test some of my stuff, but they can't do that. We're locked out of that. Maybe you guys have better connections than I do. If you want, I have some doob tubes here. I can put some of these in the empties. You guys can take them, maybe take them to a lab. Let me know what I'm working with. I'm not sure if this is federally compliant THC 8, Delta 8, A. It's tough to know. You guys' language is unclear, and I can't test it. I got him from Jeffrey Goff. He's testified in front of you guys before. I bought him from his licensed company, Yggdrasil Genetics. He's also the man who owns Galena's. I've grown his cannabis outdoors, federally compliant with ORC 3780. Back to my notes here. Sorry, I got a little carried away. So again, Calendar, thank you for that. Rep. Odioso took the call of my colleague, Rodney Hash. That's not even his constituent, but he did take the time to speak with him, which I found very inspiring. Everybody over here, Isaacson, Mohammed, Timms, and Seinenberg. Seinenberg called me on recess and we spoke for 45 minutes and I educated him about this industry. And when I finished talking for 10 minutes, he didn't tell me I talked too much. He asked follow-up questions. Rep. Thomas, Chair, you've inspired me by your lack of accountability to your constituents. Does the name James Powers mean anything to you?
It does not.
Okay, well, just to inform you, that is one of your constituents. He is a veteran. He's called your office over 10 times to speak about this. He's spoken on the national level about this. He'd like to hear back from you.
Great, I'll do that.
Thank you. Representative Stewart, you've inspired me as well. Your lack of accountability to your own legislation and the inability to answer questions in the public sphere has inspired me. I get really anxious if you can't tell, but I consume a lot of cannabis to make sure that I can speak to you guys fluently and professionally. Otherwise, I'd probably be a little bit more angry because you're coming after my livelihood. Do you understand that? I don't know what you just saw. I handed to Simon Dunkel. Those are my homemade RSO edibles. Those are legal under ORC 3780. I am not using hydrocarbon processing, if that means anything to you. I decided to put my badge on today. I don't normally do that. I'm not here representing King City Gardens, but I do work as a community outreach manager for King City Gardens. A level 1 cultivator in this state located out of Forest Park. If any of you want a tour of a level 1 facility that is using technology that the rest of this industry is not, come check us out. I've spoken about remediation here before. I've asked you guys to have the regulators, the DCC, put labels on the jar. They like to put their DCC logo. I'd like to see a logo on there that says this product has been remediated if we have moldy cannabis that has been sent through a microwave or radiation and sold to the consumers. Why are we hiding that information from them? If you want to see a facility that runs with 25,000 square feet and doesn't use remediation, come check us out. We're working with Grove Bags. They are located out of Cleveland, Ohio. They are a local company and they are now being used nationwide for their technology. If you want to see a processor, I have connections at Cannabis and Jimmy Gould, who worked with many of you guys back when this program first started. We're working with his company, Cannabis, and they're processing some of our products. I have seen the very people working there. They have some of the smartest, I don't know if the name Daxtraction Labs means anything to you. He is an Ohio-made cannabis processor. He has now been hired by Cannabis, and he is now working there. He can teach you more about processing than anybody in this room can. It's clear to those paying attention that the community intends to move rapidly. Whether it's combining these dates, moving these things, it's great to hear that we're making an impact, but we'd like to start the conversation over. One of my favorite books by Pierce Brown, Red Rising, talks about changing the bloody damn paradigm, and that's what I'm here to do today. That pamphlet I gave out has got a lot of educational content on there. I'm happy to share more. My website is on there as well. It's how many people have figured out how to speak with you all. I don't know if you guys are close with your colleague, Representative Kelly Dieter, but I was in Delphos yesterday talking to one of her constituents, general manager at a dispensary out there. Her community is mad at her because she's withholding the money from them. Do you know how crazy that is? I talked to somebody in that store. I have IBS, so I have to go to the bathroom at least 10 times a day sometimes. Yesterday, a woman in a dispensary gave me a fist bump because of that, because cannabis helps us both with that. Another person there talked to me. I talked to them about my suicidal ideation and how cannabis terpenes such as osmine helped me fight those thoughts, and he almost cried when I shared that with him. How do you look at your colleague Kelly Dieter and tell her that that community leader that has hired those people and helped them, that she's withholding the money? How do you sleep at night? Withholding the money from those communities, it's not for the cost of what happened there, it's rewarding the communities for be forward thinking. You're gonna hear from many colleagues today from the Cannabis Consumer Coalition, a lot more issues that I don't have time to address today, but I came here to offer you a new paradigm, and many of the people here are gonna speak with you. I have to thank you all.
Thank you for your time. I'm sorry, thank you for testimony. Are there any questions for the witness?
Is my time up?
Your time's up, yes.
Okay.
Representative Sonnenberg with a question.
Yeah, more of a comment. Just want to, Eric, through the chair, Mr. Whited, thanks for your testimony and for this information. And again, we have spoken, and I appreciate your trying to educate us. And to echo Rep. Callender's earlier comments, you know, we're definitely working on trying to get some of the stuff that you've explained to us and some of your concerns addressed with this legislation. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Through the chair to the rep, I'm looking forward to lunch next week.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Daniel Del Signore from the Ohio Cannabis Consumer Coalition.
Ready? Oh, sorry about that. I'm having a little trouble with the microphone here. Alrighty. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for having me today. My name is Daniel Del Signore Jr., and I'm here today to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 56. As a medical cannabis patient and responsible cannabis consumer in the state of Ohio, I want to be clear. Senate Bill 56 fails to honor the will of the people, the very voters who passed Issue 2 into law in November of 2023. Let's remember what happened in November of 2023. Over 57% of Ohioans voted in favor of cannabis legalization. That's more than voted for the governor to whine. That's not just a win, it's a landslide, and that means something. That means the people of Ohio spoke clearly and decisively. They want legal access, they want social equity, and they want responsible tax revenue distribution. Under the law passed by the people, 36% of cannabis tax revenue is to be distributed to communities, including 15% directly to cities and municipalities that allow legal cannabis sales in their jurisdiction. Senate Bill 56 threatens to undercut that promise. Why should cities that support legalization and bear the responsibility of regulation be denied their fair share? This isn't about partisanship. This isn't even about cannabis at its core. This is about democracy. It's about whether elected officials will listen to the will of the constituents that they serve. As a patient, I use cannabis daily to manage mental health conditions safely and effectively. I use cannabis as harm reduction. Cannabis has effectively saved my life from benzodiazepines, alcohol, and other dangerous substances. Make no mistake, I'm alive today because of cannabis. Why are you trying to take our medicine away and recriminalize us for a non-toxic substance, claiming it's to protect the children when we have Sunny D vodka seltzers, Welch's grape juice alcoholic beverages, Not Your Father's root beer, and orange cream soda, all of which are attractive to children and very lethal? Alcohol kills 3 million individuals worldwide. Additionally, according to Dr. Keith Humphreys in the American Academy of Clinical Toxicology, no child has ever died from an accidental cannabis ingestion. With this information, why aren't we cracking down on that alcohol as opposed to a substance which has had 50,000 peer-reviewed studies completed on it, and we still cannot find an LD50, meaning lethal dose? Where are the priorities? Is it really protecting the children or making more money off of your constituents in an unfair way and using ignorance to do it? I am not a criminal. We are not criminals. I'm an Ohioan. We are all Ohioans. And I stand here today because I believe that the law that voters pass must be respected in the way it was passed, not rewritten to fit someone else's agenda to reflect weaker medicine because some in Ohio Senate are still uneducated when it comes to cannabis. I urge you to please reject Senate Bill 56 and please listen to your constituents, including myself, when we call. Please respect democracy and uphold issue 2. Thank you for having me today and hearing my testimony. I am willing to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Rodney Hennessy from the Cannabis Consumer Coalition. Is Rodney Hennessy here?
Yep, right here, sorry.
No problem.
Just had to get the lab mic back. All right. Chair, Vice Chair, Ranking Member, and members of this committee. I would like to thank you today for the opportunity to speak in opposition of SB 56. Despite the recent amendments, it still undermines much of what Ohio voters overwhelmingly passed on issue 2. My name is Rodney Hennessy, but most people in the cannabis space know me as Rodney Hash. I've worked in every part of the cannabis industry, from cultivation and extraction to retail and education, and I currently help lead the Ohio Cannabis Consumer Coalition. We represent a diverse group of Ohioans from across the political spectrum, and as you see today, we come in numbers. This is not a partisan issue, and again, we asked for more progress, not more prohibition. We're supposed to go forwards, not backwards. A lot of the things, including within the amendments, go back on the decrim law that we passed 10 years ago. SB 56 contains several concerning provisions. Most notably, it continues to favor the current existing operators, giving them more grow space, going from 25,000 square foot for level 1 operators to 100. You're not allowing the small scale operators and you're shutting them out. There's no new operators still. One of the many promises of issue 2 was equity. That means giving the little guy a chance. If you really are concerned about fighting the illegal market, make it to where you don't have to be a millionaire to be able to go through the legal avenue. Give them a shot. Let them be legal. Let them pay taxes. That's what the founders would have wanted. The founders of this very country grew hemp. The first bill ever passed on this ground in America required farmers to grow it because it was such a big cash crop. I know our textbooks say that tobacco was the biggest cash crop, but that's a lie. It was hemp. Hemp is cannabis, not just the textile. In Washington's diary, he said that he went through and killed off his males late and he was upset about it. Why do you think he would be upset about it? Because then he has seeds in his end product. Because he's looking to grow the flower to smoke it and consume it. Jefferson almost caused an international incident procuring seeds from China. Like, he almost caused an international incident as this country was being founded. That's how important to him it was. This bill creates many new unnecessary new crimes, including the sub-bill, such as if you're hitting a vape pen as a passenger in a car or you're being Ubered, now you're being labeled a criminal and putting the driver at risk. We asked as voters to normalize and regulate responsibly, not irresponsibly. Additionally, combining the med and rec programs without separate testing, without separate standards, not giving any patients protections or rights, it's hurting them. It's hurting a lot of people, specifically patients. And as a doctor, I would hope we would expect better. They deserve better. The hemp program, the rec program, and the med program should all be under the Department of Agriculture. Maybe we should stop with the agricultural prejudice. Finally, limiting the number of dispensaries just makes absolutely no sense at all. I'm from Cleveland. We just, for the first time in my lifetime, seen a reduction in opioid deaths. And that matters a lot to me. A large number of my graduating class from 2014 is no longer with us due to opioids. AA in Canada supports using cannabis to get off of alcohol and opioids. I'm sure a lot of people in this room didn't even know that. That's been going on since I was in high school. This is not correlation, this is causation. We've seen a reduction in opioid deaths in every state that has legalized both medical and recreational marijuana. That's proven. It's state after state after state, and now in our great state of Ohio. And I would like to see that continue. More access, not less access. That's the answer for that. This is just a few of my many, many concerns about SB 56, including the amendments. It's better than it was, but it's not enough. I recommend you guys restart from scratch. None of what's in there is good. You have dozens of people in this room that would love to give you feedback, and I would love to help educate you rationally. I appreciate your time. I open the floor for dialogue. I also have a podcast. If anyone would like to have an open, respectful dialogue about this, I encourage everyone. My podcast is Rodney Hash. Google me, you'll find it. I thank you for your time and attention on this issue, especially Representative Callender, Representative Odioso, Representative Mohammed, Representative Isaacson, Representative Timms, and Representative Seinenberg, all of which have been very receptive to us and working with all of us in this coalition. So I thank you guys very much so.
Mr. Hennessy, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Ranking Member Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of the advocates for your sustained passion for this issue, for speaking up, and especially for really framing it in your testimony in sort of personal terms and why you're here advocating for something that is so important to you and your community. I think it would just be helpful to get a sense from you of where you think either what you're most concerned about, like if you had to triage, or where you think the most ripe opportunity for progress is?
I think the most opportunity for progress is opening up the market. I think the biggest thing is not like we increased the cap from 350 to 400 with the amendment, which is good. But as I said, the more access that we have, the less opioid deaths we have. And maybe that's not even just dispensaries. Maybe that's farmers markets where we could, again, tax them, regulate it. And there's Vehicle City Social and Clio Cultivation up in Michigan to give you guys examples of legal ways to do this. And I've personally seen farmers work with like old ladies that they've got a tab with them that they've forgiven tons of debt so that way they can have their medicine because it's important to people.
Follow up? Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone.
Our next witness is Elliot Durant from the Consumer Coalition. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. To the chairman, vice chairman, and all members of the committee. Oh, sorry. So let me start over. So chairman, vice chairman, and all members of the committee, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak before you today. As you've probably heard from everyone, most of our speeches involve education. And in my opinion, this is one thing that we all lack here in one way or another. Between the consumers, the patients, the politicians, the industry, there's a lack of education, and that's the one thing I think that can really bring us together. So with that being said, my name is Elliot Durant. I am a member of the Ohio Cannabis Consumer Coalition, but today I come to you as just a passionate advocate for a plant that has saved many lives. Cannabis has been a big part of my life for 26 years now. I am 38. You do the math there. Now, that may not be something you want to hear, but it is a reality, especially when growing up in the inner city on the east side of Cleveland as a young minority where we're not educated about cannabis at all. Cannabis has been a big part of my life in many ways, from using to growing to being a part of the community to representing the culture, and for the last 6 years, being in the Ohio legal cannabis industry. I strongly oppose Senate Bill 56, not out of disregard for rule of law, but out of deep concern for the democratic process and for the will of the people. The voters of the state made their voices clear when they passed Issue 2. They did not vote for half measures or hidden rollbacks. They voted for a future where cannabis policies reflect fairness, common sense, and forward progress, not outdated stigmas or punitive overreach. Senate Bill 56 disregards that mandate. Rather than honoring the voter-approved framework, this bill pivots towards criminalization, targeting individuals who share cannabis with one another. If our goal is to promote public safety and public health, then we must educate, not incarcerate. I want to say that just one more time. We must educate, not incarcerate. There's a glaring lack of comprehensive cannabis education in Ohio, just like it was when I started when I was 12. Whether it's law enforcement, politicians, medical professionals, or even the public, there is a need for cannabis education. Instead of investing in education and harm reduction, this bill doubles down on punitive measures. That is not progress, that is regression. We must also acknowledge a broader truth. Cannabis policy has for far too long been weaponized disproportionately against marginalized communities. Senate Bill 56 risks repeating those injustices under the guise of regulation. Respectfully, I urge this body to pause and consider whether this legislation reflects the will of voters or simply the will to control a movement they do not understand or have not been educated on. Ohioans voted for legalization, but this is recriminalization in disguise. Do not betray those who place trust in you, yet lead with compassion, with fairness, respect, and most importantly, education. Before I finish, I know you guys like to ask questions, but I do have a question for you guys. Have any of you ever been into an Ohio metric dispensary?
So I will let them answer that if they wish. Are there any questions for the witness? Representative Mohammed with a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Durant, for your testimony. I just wanted to say thank you for coming. I think I was echoed with Rep. Sonnenberg and Rep. Callender as well. I was at the Cannabis Town Hall a couple of weeks ago, and I've had a chance to see a lot of you. So again, thank you for what you're doing. It makes a difference. We're making good progress. I want to give a special recognition to Ranking Member Isaacson for his effort as well, really in making sure that we're putting a good step forward and that we're making some progress, especially in some of the criminalization parts of the bill. So again, thank you again.
Any other questions for the witness? Representative Callender with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With permission, I'd like to answer the question that was asked by the witness. I can tell you that yes, I have been to fairly public in my visits to some of the dispensaries, but I've taken a number of members, both on this committee and general members, and I know there's some folks in the audience that are part of the industry. And I want to compliment my colleagues, even those who are not real enthusiastic about the industry, for taking the time to visit grow sites, dispensaries, processors, and testing labs. And I've personally been on visits to each of those with multiple members of the General Assembly. So for those who don't want to say yes or no, I will tell you that I would guess a majority of members have taken the time to visit and get educated. And it's helped us as this bill has moved forward. So I'm sure those in the industry would re-invite folks to come again to tour their facilities. And I think it is eye-opening when you do. And I think most of the members that visit come away saying, my gosh, this is like going into a lab. This is so professional and so well done and so regulated and controlled. It gives a lot of comfort to the members. But thank you for asking the question.
There is a reason why I asked that question, sorry. The reason why I asked that question is because we talk a lot about protecting the kids, and I worked in the dispensary for almost 4 years. And just to go over for those who aren't aware, when you first walk in, your ID is checked immediately. From there, you go into a lobby where you sit. From there, your name is called. From there, you go to the back where your ID is checked once again. So we're focusing on protecting the kids in a situation where kids can't even make it past the front door. Meanwhile, they can go to a Shell gas station, run to the back of the cooler, throw a 40 under their shirt and walk out. But that's why I was asking. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Michael Smith from the Cannabis Consumer Coalition.
Chair Thomas, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the House Judiciary Committee, thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Mike Smith, lifelong Ohio resident, growing up in Northwest Ohio farm country, and I'm a technology leader here in Columbus. I'm also a medical cannabis patient and a home grower of some of the tastiest terps you'll come across. Senate Bill 56 is at best legislative overreach and at worst just corruption. Both the House and the Senate have introduced bills that no one's asked for that implement punitive and retaliatory measures against 57% of the voters who passed issue 2. It's punitive because Republicans didn't want it, the governor didn't want it, and lobbying groups didn't want it, so now you're punishing the voters for passing it. You asked for testimony, but you never asked for meaningful dialogue on what it would enhance and improve issue 2. Discussing positive change cannot be done in 3-minute time chunks. The legislative body exists to amend and repeal laws that benefit the state and the people you represent. This bill directly circumvents our democratic process by going against the will of the voters. Everyone here will speak to various portions of this bill, but I feel it's imperative to talk about what everybody loves most. Let's talk about money. This bill will spell an economic disaster for Ohio in years to come. The craft cannabis industry is vital to ensuring cannabis industry grows and creates jobs. Tier 3 and craft growers are the real job creators. This bill eliminates that opportunity. Home grow and craft cannabis are also medical necessities for patients. The MSOs do not care about growing the best cannabis, they care about profit. Craft cannabis cares more about people to ensure a healthy grow, hand trimming, proper drying, not automated processes and remediating your products because it's cheaper to grow poorly and zap it with radiation than it is to do the job right the first time. The economic impact of recriminalizing cannabis and restrictions being imposed to consumers will have impacts beyond the cannabis industry. I'm a technologist here in Columbus. Ohio is known as the tech capital of the Midwest. We have 400,000 jobs in technology here. 60% of technologists admitted in the national survey to using medical or recreational cannabis. That comes to $18 billion annually brought into the state of Ohio through income from cannabis using technologists. The medical portion of Ohio's cannabis industry brought in $2.36 million since its inception. So you're attacking $18 billion worth of income just for what? For pennies? It's really like, you know, the cannabis industry is rookie numbers compared to the incomes you're attacking from 60% of the voters of the state. Finding and retaining top talent is critical to ensuring Ohio remains competitive. I deal with this issue every day, but now they can go to Michigan and work as a booming technology industry, and they'll protect them, not go against the will of the voters. Ohio breeds greatness. It's home to Edison, the Wright brothers, John Glenn. OSU agricultural department is continually revolutionizing growing. Grove bags revolutionize cannabis curing technology. With the exception of Grove, I sat at OCHBS where Representative Callender was also in attendance, and I get to hear about technology, robotics, and farming innovations from Michigan, not Ohio. I foresee a major boom in innovation in the cannabis industry, but we're going to miss out on that because you're recriminalizing this. We should be leading this as Ohio. That's what we do. The short-sighted decisions by legislators are risking billions to the Ohio economy just to line the pockets of MSO and lobbying groups. On 4/30/2025, Senator Huffman, the sponsor of SB 56, at the 20-minute mark of the recording said cannabis should be deregulated once the return on equity to the large price and the risk of the cultivators and the people in the process gets their money. He supports deregulation as long as everyone gets paid. He's a medical professional who's willing to cause harm to medical patients, harm to veterans, harm to underrepresented communities, and harm to the voters of the state so the MSO, venture capitalists, and founders of OCAN can get rich at the expense of Ohioans. SB 56 is corrupt, it's a waste of taxpayer money, and it's a job killer. It's bad for Ohio, bad for its citizens, bad for innovation. I've only got 55 seconds left, so improvements, what we should be talking about are plant count. There's a whole conversation that's gonna take longer than a couple seconds. Better anti-discrimination policies for employees. Craft cannabis, tier 3, lower barrier to entry, or even a co-op model, micro licensing. Cultivators should be able to grow outdoors. All licensed applicants should be a minimum of 10 years living in Ohio to be able to call themselves an Ohio business and not move in from Michigan or Oklahoma and say, no, I'm an Ohioan and I'm an Ohio business. And then education. You know, we're gonna see someone come up and talk about poison control because ER visits have increased. That's true, because people aren't educated and they accidentally take too many edibles, but no one's ever died from cannabis. They just have a really rough 4 hours. Thank you for allowing me to testify today. Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Smith, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Good.
Awesome.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Kyle Coates. Welcome.
Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Swearingen, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide opponent testimony on substitute Senate Bill 56. My name is Kyle Coates, and I'm a member of Ohio Cannabis Consumer Coalition, and I'm here today to provide testimony not only on my behalf, but with the coalition as well. You have or will have heard several arguments against sub SB 56 from my fellow coalition members, and I hope from multiple angles for maximum understanding of our position on the subject. I'll try to utilize the time given to me to highlight some things that are important to me, possibly some different angles. I'm a father of young children. Right now, a few of them are old enough to understand political motions, and it's become harder and harder to navigate conversations with them about the subject because politics can be so tricky to begin with. I want my children to understand how to be active members of the community while trying to truly make an impact, and they're not kept in the dark on many subjects. They say what comes to mind, and they're always quick to notice when something isn't right. Well, how do I defend legislative process when it's failing to perform as designed? It becomes much harder to foster their concept of democracy for their future when it is apparent that the fight to retain democracy is alive and real in present times. It's been stated that Ohioans may not have really known what they initially voted for with issue 2, but one thing that's been made clear by many Ohioans thus far by my observation is that we did in fact know well what we voted for. Senate Bill 56, substitute Senate Bill 56, or any other bill containing language inherently opposite of the language passed within issue 2 is blatantly pushing against the will of the majority. It is concerning that someone finds it necessary to further regulate what is already strictly regulated enough. The current rules and regulations are what were passed with issue 2, and any further modifications should be considered by the people when or if they find it necessary. I've been using cannabis for relief for the entirety of the time that I've used it. For 25 years, I've self-medicated using cannabis for physical, mental, and spiritual relief. I'm fortunate for the path that has led me to be able to use cannabis as medicine, and I wish that ability for everyone that desires it. I've been an Ohio medical cannabis patient for 6 years, but I've let my registration lapse due to current circumstances, and I'm not too sure how I feel about going back to have to jump through more hoops and pay to be in a system when it's deemed that it is in fact medicine that I'm procuring, and anybody without a medical card can get the same thing with less hoops, just more tax dollars. Shouldn't patients come first when they're the real backbone of the medical program, and without them, there would be no need for a medical program to begin with. And it would be amazing to be able to find a way to facilitate a real caregiver system within Ohio's medical program, something that only patients had access to, that also gave independent growers and other patients the ability to enter into the conversation while fostering a cleaner, more accountable environment as a whole. Ultimately, it appears that the real issue is in most cases the money and how to spend the money. And any and all tax monies generated from businesses done by licensed operators of any kind should be efficiently used for impactful enrichment of the community where the business is done. There should be zero caps on time the revenue is allotted to municipalities, as they will always need extra funds from all feasible sources. I completely disagree with the universal marijuana permit, as it appears to be another arbitrary list and fee fine generation tool, and it just adds more items to an already large bill. Any legal age person should be able to trade, gift, and share cannabis. All legal age Ohioans should be able to register for licensing for cultivation, processing, and or distribution if they desire or have the capacity to do so. The apparent merging of SB 56 and language from SB 86 is a large area of concern, as its rushed introduction appears to indicate a general lack of forethought on both. If intoxicating hemp is the real issue, shift the focus to natural versus synthetic. Focus on the use of natural Ohio-grown hemp. Foster legalization of cannabis and hemp altogether. Foster Ohio agriculture by way of hemp. The reality is we should be focusing on discussing decriminalization instead of legalization of cannabis and hemp altogether. For the plain fact that we can all gather to discuss nuances to topics that were completely off the table less than a decade ago, we should soon recognize the absurdity of the demonization and over-regulation of a plant that provides relief for many forms and for a multitude of people. Although there have been obvious compromises made within the original bill language, I'll say it again, any language against the language passed within issue 2 is against the will of the majority of Ohio. I appreciate your time and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Coates, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Madison Millard from the Consumer Coalition. Is Madison Millard here? No. All right. Peter LaFontaine. Peter LaFontaine. Not seeing Peter. Is Irvin Leibson here? Mr. Leibson, welcome to committee.
How are you?
Well, please proceed when you're ready.
Yes, sir. By the way, I talked to Teddy Smith. We were trying to make sure that my associate Alan Mooney was going to get 5 minutes and he didn't get back. Could you give him 5 after me, please? We came up, I came from Loveland and he's here with me, Mr. Mooney. Would that be okay with you? Thank you for your kindness, sir. Thank you all for allowing me to speak. Usually I'd start out with a joke, but I'm on strike and I'm not going to be funny today, so sorry. Anyway, I've been working with Governor DeWine. I have the letters with me from him. I know his concerns and his concerns for children, which are some of my concerns as well. And we've been writing back and forth. I'm very concerned about children, about driving safety, about incarceration and recriminalization. I just ask you all, would you just think this through? Think it through. Think about what we're going to do. Think about the cost of what this is going to cost. Think about our great police. I'm a big friend of our police. And I'll tell you one thing, all the police I talk to are so glad they can go after crime instead of people on cannabis. And another thing too, is they have problems when they go home, of spousal abuse. A lot of police would prefer to use cannabis instead of alcohol. I know this also, I was a Playboy bartender and took care of a lot of police. And I know about some of these stories that they tell me. So it's worth considering, most respectfully. My friend, Mike DeWine, he talks about potency all the time. And this is where him and I have a big disagreement. He thinks it's back from, it's not like the 60s and today it's so much stronger. Well, I sort of remember Panama Red, Acapulco Gold, and things like that, a lot stronger than what is today. So one of the things that I talked to Mike about is moderation. Why are we not talking about moderation? You know how you moderate? You use stronger, higher potency cannabis and use less. Stay healthy. So it's a different way of thinking, but worth considering. Another thing, children. I care about children. One of the things I talked about with Mike is about having a, what do you call, a gun safe that you put your finger on, biometric, excuse me, sir, biometric. So if you could have a portable biometric gun safe, small one, you can take it wherever you go and your children cannot have access to your cannabis or also the drugs you take too. Driving, I have a big concern about that. And Mike and I talk about that. Here's an answer. Let the police give out CBD. CBD, if you gave, and if the police came and say, look, things are changing, we'd like to give you some CBD so you could vape on your drive, it's non-psychoactive. And we encourage you, if you're at work, at school, if you're using farm equipment, use CBD. you're going to take a drive, don't use cannabis, don't use alcohol or drugs. Incarceration. Please think this through. Please think it through. This gentleman said had gone to a dispensary, and he was talking about one of the dispensaries. I don't know about what you're seeing, but 50% of the people I see are seniors. They're disabled people like me. And I've been an advocate for disabled, by the way, since 1998. I've served hundreds and hundreds of disabled and seniors. When I go to the dispensary, first thing I see is seniors. So, okay, so do we want the police to go and lock up our seniors? Do we want them to go pick up the disabled people and haul them to jail for cannabis? Are you know what I was going to say. Anyway, so I just like to wrap up with that. Let our police do their job. They're great people. Let them do their job and let them work on crime and not on cannabis. And let the free market work. And instead of raising taxes and telling people they can't go to other states, let's compete. Let's compete. So I want to thank you all for the time you've given me. I came up from Loveland, stage 4 kidney disease, to be here today. And I'm honored to speak to you. I'm very good on policy. If anybody would like to work with me, I could stay over a few days. I'm at the Holiday Inn here at the State House. If you need me, please give me a call. Irvin Leifson, thank you for your time. If you have any questions.
Sir, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Ranking Member Isaacson with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Leibson, and thank you for your advocacy and for coming up from my neck of the woods.
Yes, sir.
Even with everything you have going on. What is, what's giving you hope in this space these days?
Well, I mean, I love our police and I talk to them all the time. And one of the things they were so happy about is they can go after the criminal. The criminal, not the state people in Ohio that a landslide victory, I think it was 57% of Ohioans decided for legalization. Do you want to recriminalize? Do you want to start sending our disabled and our seniors? Picture that for a second. Just picture getting those seniors. Oh, let's put them in jail. And then think about the cost. Think about the cost and lining police at the borders of the state to prevent people from going over to Michigan instead of competing and let the free market work. That's how I feel. Does that answer you? Anybody else, sir?
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thanks for your kindness, sir.
Sure, thank you.
Alan, you want to come up?
Alan Mooney, please. Welcome.
Chairman, Vice Chairman, Committee, thank you for the moment. I'm Sir Alan Mooney. I got the Sir by being knighted by the Catholic Pope, considered the highest honor in the world. I'm also a state and federally licensed registered investment advisor, the largest in Ohio, with about $16 billion under management. As you might imagine, money is an issue always with me. I represented the Ohio epileptic families and been up here many times and have testified for the legalization of marijuana. I negotiated privately with what was then Attorney General Mike Devine and Betty Montgomery, extraordinary group of people. What we do have is a half measure for sure, depending on whether you're for or against it. I'll just make mine very simple. I think in terms of dollars. We're driving billions of dollars of business other places right now, particularly to our sister state, Michigan, which just irks the heck out of me, as Woody would say. But more importantly, I have legislation I'd like to be introducing for a constitutional amendment to legalize cannabis like a tomato. Children from cradle to grave, in my opinion, should be allowed to use it. I'd rather much see them using cannabis or some derivative of cannabis than all the pills they give them for their attention deficit disorder and everything else. You've heard plenty of testimony on the dangers of marijuana and on the positive sides of marijuana. I won't go into that. I will tell you that there are people right now very interested in changing Ohio to a total legal state. You could motivate them by changing the people's will. The people are represented here don't even begin to reflect. We had 500,000 more votes than Mike did at the last election. We can now muster 1 million more. Once home grow was allowed, 500,000 people last year in the state of Ohio grew. You got to think about that. We've got 1 million more votes than what Mike got at the election we can bring forth. So as you're contemplating this and driving business up to Michigan and back into the underground, why aren't we capitalizing on it and making it totally legal? Those are my words. Thank you very much. I'll answer any questions or be glad to stick around.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Matthew Hyde. Welcome, Mr. Hyde.
How long do I have?
5 minutes.
5, okay, perfect. All right, Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Swearingen, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Matthew Hyde, representing Civics Cannabis and the Cannabis Consumers Coalition, and I rise in respectful opposition to Senate Bill 56. While we all share a responsibility to ensure the safe, equitable implementation of cannabis reform, Sub-Bill SB 56 undermines that goal by disregarding the very public will be expressed of issue two and replacing it with fragmented and a punitive approach. Instead of building the foundation Ohio voters supported, this bill interjects confusion, restricts access, and adds criminal penalties that do little to advance public health or safety. Firstly, education must remain a cornerstone of our cannabis framework. Yet this bill repeals funding and mechanisms that would support public awareness, youth prevention, impaired driving reduction, and expungement assistance. Without proper education and outreach, we risk substituting progress with confusion and harm. Education, not fear or overregulation, is how we promote responsible cannabis use. Legalization is not a finish line, it's a responsibility. Rather than empowering citizens with knowledge, Sub-SB 56 reverts to outdated enforcement tactics. Second, this process requires cooperation. I appreciate and thank the members of the committee that have reached out to us, but cannabis policy should be shaped by inclusive dialogue with patients, consumers, cannabis industry members, public health experts, and local leaders. However, this latest substitute version still goes backwards, eliminating pathways for new licenses, increasing penalties, and adding layers of restriction without the stakeholder input in this process deserves. It strips local control while offering little in return to communities on the front lines of reform and reinvestment. That is not cooperation, that is exclusion. Lastly, coordination is essential. Ohio has the chance to set a national standard model that merges regulatory oversight with economic inclusion, health safeguards, and personal freedom. It's possible. But that requires all voices at the table: patients, caregivers, veterans, small businesses, farmers, and communities most impacted by the war on cannabis. One that integrates adult use and medical cannabis systems, supports small business, and maintains clear, fair regulations. But this bill creates unnecessary complexity, dual standards, and inconsistent oversight that makes coordination difficult across agencies, providers, and jurisdictions. Sub-SB 56 closes doors where it should actually open them. So we do not need to begin from scratch. even though we may have said earlier that we did, but because we already have an outline. It's called issue 2. So we need to work together, educate properly, cooperate together, and then coordinate a proper framework that the voters voted in. So SB 56, of course, does not achieve that. So I urge this committee to reject the bill in its form and recommend it to a process that reflects the voter-approved issue 2. Thanks.
Mr. Hyde, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Kat Packer from the Drug Policy Alliance. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Kat Packer. I'm the Director of Drug Markets and Legal Regulation for the Drug Policy Alliance. I wear a number of different hats in the space. I also serve as a cannabis policy practitioner in residence at Ohio State University's Drug Enforcement and Policy Center, and have served as a government official, the first person of color in the nation to run a medical and adult use cannabis program, served as the executive director of the City of LA's Department of Cannabis Regulation. But Ohio is home, and I'm concerned about what's happening at home for a number of different reasons, but primarily because it seems as if the legislature is content on disregarding the will of Ohio voters, and doing so in 3 primary ways. One, by kind of just fundamentally disregarding what legalization means. My recommendation to this body and the legislature is to eliminate any new criminal penalties that have been established by these bills. Every single new criminal penalty needs to be struck out. Otherwise, we don't actually understand what legalization means. The other piece that I want to raise for folks, I'm concerned about how haphazardly we seem to be willing to eliminate the Cannabis Social Equity and Jobs Program. Now, I know that some folks may experience some isms, and so maybe they have some concern with the word equity. But as Anthony Riley had said, it's about community and opportunity. And I really don't understand how this body could be opposed to opportunity and community. And so if it's the word equity that concerns you, please, by all means, rename the program. But please do not abandon Ohioans and Ohio communities, because that is what will happen if we abandon this program. The Cannabis Social Equity and Jobs Fund and program is not just about economic opportunity for small businesses, but that is important. We should be creating opportunities for small and minority businesses. It's not just minority businesses that were to be provided a pathway towards inclusion through this program, but veterans and persons with disabilities. You all would be disregarding those folks as well. And again, it's the Cannabis Social Equity and Jobs Program goes beyond jobs and employment opportunity. Issue 2 was supposed to provide hundreds of millions of dollars to community for criminal justice reform, expungement, bail, parole, legal aid, community-based initiatives like youth development, education, and violence prevention, substance abuse education prevention. Where's the money? Where is it? It's ours. It belongs to Ohio communities. And like the J.G. Wentworth commercial, it's our money and we need it now. We want all of the cannabis tax revenue. We want it delivered to communities, not just for 7 years. We want it delivered into perpetuity. This is important because the Social Equity and Jobs Program and Fund wasn't just some offshoot of issue 2, it was foundational. There were only 4 express purposes in issue 2. 2 of them were providing key funding to support social equity, job creation, host communities, cannabis research, and proper oversight. and improving social equity outcomes to address past and present effects of discrimination and economic disadvantage. Half of the whole purpose of issue 2 is about opportunity and community. And so long as this bill hasn't passed, you all still have an opportunity to deliver for community. Rep. Callender, I understand that you said folks are working on this and we'll get it to a point where it'll be okay. I hope so. I really do. But if we move forward with an elimination of funding for programs that are supposed to serve all Ohioans, we will be doing Ohioans a disservice, and we will be back to hold you all accountable. And I don't want to have to keep coming back here for these reasons. We should be working together. We can work together. Jurisdictions have done this work. Ohio, it's your time to get it together. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Bevan Schneck from the Ohio Municipal League. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Swearingen, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the Ohio House Judiciary Committee. My name is Bevan Schneck, and I'm the Public Affairs Director at the Ohio Municipal League. On behalf of the Municipal League, I appreciate the opportunity to provide this interested party testimony regarding Substitute Senate Bill 56, which makes a variety of changes to the state's recreational marijuana law. The Ohio Municipal League represents more than 730 cities and villages. The services provided by Ohio's municipalities are beneficial for their businesses and residents, including in the area of public safety, which uses up the vast majority of our members' revenues. I want to begin by expressing our appreciation for the sub-bill's creation of the Host Community Cannabis Fund. This mechanism ensures that local governments hosting licensed cannabis dispensaries will receive a share of the state's excise tax revenue, recognizing the important role these communities play in safely and responsibly regulating cannabis businesses. However, I would like to emphasize several important points regarding the implementation of the Host Community Cannabis Fund. First, it is essential that the funds already collected by the state through the current 10% excise tax on adult use marijuana are made available for distribution to host communities through this fund. These revenues were generated under the legal framework approved by Ohio voters in 2023, and the communities that have hosted dispensaries during this time should have access to these funds to support public safety, health, and other local services. We ask that this committee ensures that past collections can be distributed. Second, the legislature should honor the will of the voters by maintaining the percentage of the excise tax revenue that is allocated to local governments with dispensaries at 36% of the overall 10% excise tax. This percentage was part of the voter-approved framework in 2023, and it reflects a commitment to ensuring that local governments have the resources they need to address the impacts of cannabis legalization. Moreover, we urge the legislature to remove any sunset provisions currently included in the Host Community Cannabis Fund or similar distributions. The voter-approved framework established a permanent ongoing source of funding for communities that have chosen to host dispensaries, and this funding is essential for offsetting the costs of police, fire, emergency medical, and other municipal services that may experience increased demands. Many municipalities made the decision to allow dispensaries in their communities with the understanding that this revenue would be a sustained source of support. Any changes to this percentage or its duration would be a departure from the commitment made to these communities and could erode the trust between the state and local governments as well as with voters. In conclusion, we appreciate the steps taken in Substitute Senate Bill 56 to create a path for distributing these funds. However, we ask that you ensure the funds already collected are included in these distributions, that the percentage remains at 36% of the overall 10% tax, and that the distributions are made permanent, as was the clear intent of the voters. On behalf of the members of the Ohio Municipal League, thank you for your consideration of these requests and the opportunity to share our position on Senate Bill 56. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Representative Sonnenberg with a question.
So some of the proposals have been for it to be the percent of, that the host communities would receive of the 10% tax would be 25%, let's say over a certain number of years, not in perpetuity like the issue 2, as passed was. Is there anything less that the municipal league would be okay with as a compromise, or is the position just that you think that issue 2 has passed, the 36% in perpetuity should be that, that was the deal as it was cut originally. That should be the deal.
Yes, through the chair to the representative, it's the latter. We would like to have the 36% of the 10%, or if the 10% changed, whatever that number would be.
Follow up?
Yes, follow up, please. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I don't disagree. One of my mayors, in fact, that I just spoke with yesterday said, we've set aside this money, we've planned it because we assume that the police and fire pension bill is coming down the line that was discussed at the end of the last GA. And this is how, one way that we plan on being able to meet that obligation. So I'm very sympathetic and sensitive to your member's position.
Yes, and as you know, budgets are tight, things cost more, so our communities depend on sustainable funding.
And the LGF isn't going up, certainly, as far as we know, based on past experience.
Well, yeah, that's another topic. It goes up to 1.75% in the current version of the budget, but things change with general revenues, and I think you all don't really know how that works, but that's not this bill. So.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Gerald Moore from GEO Nonprofit. Not here. All right. The next witness is Tim Johnson from the Cannabis Safety First Coalition. Sorry, from the Cannabis Safety First LLC.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, members of the House Judiciary Committee, thank you for taking the time today to hear us, the opponents against the sub-bill, Senate Bill 56. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for the additional 2 minutes that you've allotted us and for the Tim timer you've put up here, as I'll name it. You have before you my testimony with numerous amendments attached to it, numerous links to justify anything and everything I've said in my testimony, support and so forth. A lot of the stuff we're hearing today from the community here, a lot of it's redundant, and I understand that because they got a passion for the same things. When we voted for issue 2, we damn well knew what we were voting for. Some of the legislators we voted for, we had no idea what they were going to do to us, but we knew what we were voting for with issue 2. Legalization. With legalization comes decriminalization. You don't criminalize something that people are voting to decriminalize. And that's what's happened here. And the sad thing I have to say as I've looked about the room, having been here involved in this for 10 years, my question is, where are the license holders? Why aren't they here defending the consumers and the patients to bring more people through the door to their point of sale? Why are they behind the scenes supporting actually the criminalization of Senate Bill 56? So what my question is to them, and I've got some of the amendments, I guess, is marketing. Why aren't they here fighting for their marketing rights? Why aren't they here fighting for a lot of things, for their business? Rather, they're in here trying to jam down criminalization in these bills that's only going to, as many people have said, drive people back to the illicit market, north, northeast, or wherever, to another state, increase the home grow market, order online. What these people don't understand, and I've said this from the beginning, is when we created the medical program in 2015, 2016, 2 of the main purposes was first to provide an alternative healthcare option. The second was to decriminalize the criminalization of cannabis in Ohio. In the medical program, that's worked fairly well. And we haven't seen the sky fall. We haven't seen all the fear-mongering language of children dying, hospitals full, impaired driving. We've seen the opposite of most of that. Right down the street at Children's Hospital, go talk to Dr. Patel. He's been studying cannabis in children with various forms of seizures for years. You guys live in a unique state. We have the Ohio Cannabis Museum, probably the largest collection of cannabis artifacts, memorabilia since cannabis, that history that we know of, right here in Athens, Ohio. take advantage of what you have before you. Take advantage of this community. Because we see one community here called the cannabis community. We don't see the industry here. We talked about social equity, and I know that's a bad word. In Ohio in 2018, an appellate court ruled that that was unconstitutional for the medical program. As Kat suggested, as Anthony suggested, as I've suggested in my things, let's call it an economic impact opportunities license. If you don't like the economic part, call it a cannabis prohibition impact license. We can't go back into starting a new era of cannabis prohibition, and that's what Senate Bill 56 does. So legalization is not legalization until we're free from prosecution. Address these standalone processors, make them vertical as any business should be. Amend the probable cause order. We've heard not only from the prosecutor, we've heard from one of the legislators himself, the two smells of cannabis and hemp can't be differentiated. As a retired law enforcement officer, I can testify to that. We don't know. So how many Fourth Amendments are we going to violate? Clarification on the 2.5 ounces. Are you talking about 2.5 ounces when we're out on our personal property or on a personal person out in the public? Or are we talking about 2.5 ounces of 12 plants for home grow? That's where there's a confusion in the language, and a lot of the people don't understand that part. Can we talk about something simple as reciprocity for out-of-state medical patients to let them come to Ohio? Can we include, as we did with the medical program, an advisory committee to the DCC? Personal cultivation, and then I'll go ahead. On personal cultivation, we talk about 6 or 12 plants. Not everybody smokes their weed. A lot of people produce products, consumables, and topicals. It takes more product, takes more biomass to make that. This is something to consider. With that, I'll go ahead and thank you for your time. And if there's any questions, I'm available to entertain them.
Mr. Johnson, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Representative Timms.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tim, for coming to testify today. No question, just a comment about the idea of social equity. Although the court, challenged that language and that terminology, I do think it's important that people who have been criminalized by marijuana and now can't participate in the industry is problematic. And so not sure how we get there as a committee in terms of addressing that, but I think it's very important that we provide opportunity to those who have been jailed, imprisoned, or unable to participate in society in a way that is meaningful. So thank you for raising that.
Through the chair to the representative, thank you, ma'am, for the support in that. I believe that very strong-heartedly, that the impact, prohibition of cannabis, the impact that it caused on individuals, either financial or criminal or whatever it may have done, wrongful incarceration, wrongful injustices, in my opinion, having enforced them for over 20 years in this very county, and seeing the injustices, seeing a 19-year-old kid over a half of a joint, lose his college grant, lose his driver's license, lose his job, get kicked out of his family's home. That opened my eyes to some stuff. When I seen children being taken out of homes from children's services in the morning, and I seen, all because of cannabis, but yet there's a gun cabinet over here with firearms, there's a liquor cabinet open, there's pharmaceuticals everywhere, but children's service couldn't care less about that. It was legal. It's not legal, it's regulated. Same as the cannabis program. There's nothing illegal about legal. It's all about regulation, but thank you very much for that, and I do support that 100%.
Representative Sonnenberg with a question.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Mr. Johnson, thank you again for being here and testifying today. If you were, because you have a history with this going back to the establishment of the medical program in 2017, 2018, what grade would you give the state up till now in terms of the establishment of the medical program, issue 2's passage, and the way that issue 2's been implemented, regulated, and so on?
Through the chair to the representative. Thank you for that question. I'll start with the medical. Aside from, again, having criminal justice reform protections for the patients, I would have gave our medical program a C+, maybe a B, what they were doing with the involvement of issue 2 coming in. And on this part, I'm sorry, but I have to give it an F. For the way that Let's be honest, we're spending $70 million a month up in Michigan, Ohio, and Zorn. We're spending 45 to 50 in adults with 5, 6 states around us purchasing here. This isn't just Ohio adult choice people. These are 5, 6 other states. So I'm going to give it an F for the failure for the lack of participation from the license holders themselves.
Yes, follow up. You would give it an F up till now.
For the adult program, yes. Sir.
Okay. And what grade would you give, even with some of the, well, with the amendments that Rep. Calendar has discussed, if you're aware of those that he mentioned in the last meeting, what would that improve the F grade or make it worse?
Through the chair to the rep. With some of the amendments, due respect to Rep. Calendar, yeah, I would have to look. And I actually gave a media interview after the last hearing of seeing some positive movement and feeling, a better program coming, seeing the understanding from, the legislators and understanding that, yeah, this is wrong. We don't need to criminalize these people for something that we're creating a legal program for them. But if they use the program, we're going to criminalize them. It made no sense. So yeah, I would push it up to a B at that point until I see it all on paper.
Okay.
Follow up.
No, thank you very much.
Representative Mohammed with a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your testimony and for your advocacy as well. I wanted to go back and briefly talk about the number of dispensaries, capping them at 400. It was initially 350, now it's 400. So that is progress, but I think we should have some perspective too, because in the state of Michigan, with less population than us, they have 1,700. I think 630 are medical, about 1,100 are recreational. The state of Oregon, with a population of 4.2 million, has 824. So I think we should have some perspective. Could you briefly cover just the issue regarding standalone processors as well? I think that was covered previously too, and the impact it would have as well on them. Thank you.
Yes, to the chair, to the representative. Michigan and Oklahoma are a good example. In Michigan, as a matter of fact, it's like 800 and some actual dispensaries. They're dual licensed, a lot of them are, and they're controlled by townships, to my understanding. As far as for Ohio, well, Oregon, they're a hot mess. It is what it is. They've got more dispensaries, I think, than they got population there, but they're starting to redact a lot of that. They're understanding their failures. In creating the medical and advising a lot on the adult program, even the hemp program, Ohio's original goal was to have a cap market. States like Michigan, Oregon, I believe Colorado, Oklahoma, and so forth, that run uncapped markets. That's why we see the low pricing that we do. That's why we see the abundance of products available on the market. That's why we see more fair ownership, because the licenses don't cost quite as much. If someone, a small business owner, wants to get in and have a private craft grow or something, or simply as a dispensary or whatever, prices that since you don't have to buy such a big a license number, they don't cost as much to get them operational. Ohio is very restrictive in our facilities. $1.5, $2 million is what it's going to cost you to open up a dispensary in Ohio, after complying with a lot of the security and the vaults and the cameras and the POSs and so forth. For Ohio, and I can't say it better than Senator Steve Huffman said that, and he's understood this from the very beginning. One day Ohio will be fully legal. We'll be an open market. Why not today? Why do we have to wait and continue to incarcerate people, continue to tie up our safety services, continue to destroy families? Why not start today if the feeling's already there? And Senator Huffman has been involved with this from the beginning. But yeah, I think the current 147 dispensaries that are going to be shooting up here soon, capping it at 400. Let's get to 400. If we need more, uncap it. So I think it's progress as we go.
Follow up? Any other questions? No. Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
Our next witness is Joey Elwood from Appalachian Girl Cannabis Company.
Joey Elwood needs to submit that via written.
Okay, thank you. Our next witness is Josh Crosher. Welcome, Josh.
Howdy. I am not knowing where to start, right? This room well covered a lot of these issues. So I can see that it's been documented what needs done here. So where should I start? I'm taking it that nobody up here knows who Dr. Raphael Meshulam, Dr. Ethan Roussos, or Jeremy Plum is. I'm hoping I'm correct with that. So if you went to be a referee for basketball, even if it was biddy ball and you didn't know Bird, Magic, and Jordan, I get the challenges, the complexities that you guys are facing, entering a scene that you really haven't put the due diligence in to understand where the culture is and where you guys kind of are collectively as people that presented Senate Bill 56. I'm Josh Crozier. I have a master's of science degree in sustainable agriculture. I'm an advisor at the Cannabis History Museum, and I started academia with my natural resources management degree at Hocking College in 2003. I've went full circle now to where I'm the cannabis co-director at Hocking College of the Capstone and Practicum program. And I just want to offer a little bit of insight from what I see. I see a market that's never going to be able to hold the black market down. And that's due to things like expanding the cultivation area for tier 1 and tier 2. Instead of opening this up to what consumers actually want, which is tier 3, right? Everybody started drinking Carlos Rosé because it was in a gallon jug and cheap, right? But we move on to that. And we expand. And what the black market offers that you guys are nowhere near on is craft, the quality. And you're producing a lot of flower that goes into edibles indoors when really the only energy allotment that I see useful in the cultivation of cannabis is with craft growing. Who's going to go pay these prices for some what they consider soulless cannabis when they can go out to an Athens and Meg's farmer where they've bought it for decades, where it's proven to be safe, and they can smell it? That's one of the main barriers here. Until you can smell the product, you're not really going to be able to eliminate that side of things. These people want taxed, by the way. They want to contribute to this market and haven't been able to enter that market. I think we need to think about the fantasies of the consumer when we're putting forth this type of legislation, right? I want complex fruits with phylloids and hints of pine in my flower. I want to be able to smell that. It's not just shove this down our throats and we'll take it, because then you're not eliminating that gap, right? And that gap brings financial opportunities to Ohio. Nobody's going to come here for cannabis tourism when what they're buying is some mass-produced, over-trimmed, beat-around buds. They're going to come here, though, when we start opening up these different autoclaves, representative of different areas and soils that it's been produced in here for years. That's what's going to draw some impact from other states. Who's going to come here? I mean, we're not really opening the door for what's most important. The people that voted for this are majority consumers. So, you know, there's other things in the bill that obviously these guys have well covered. One of them I'd like to reiterate is us as hemp farmers at App Girls Cannabis. What you're asking us to do is take a federally compliant product and stick it into a federally illegal dispensary. I can't get over this. I'm sorry. I just can't get over that. I think it's absurd. And I think that we need to stop worrying about how thick the pockets are, the tier 1, tier 2 players, and keep shoving down our throats product that we don't really stand behind. We want to know our farmers. We want to be connected to the companies that produce our products. So thank you for hearing me out. I would love to take a question.
Mr. Crozier, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Ranking Member Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your testimony. What do you, I actually sort of don't totally understand, so maybe you can help explain, why don't we allow outdoor grow? Like, what's been that debate? What's the sort of?
So there's the fear that a baby will get into the weed and roll around and get high, right? Like, we have grown cannabis. You could be a child and run through a cannabis field. and have it all over you and not get high. And that's part of the complexities that I talked about. And I respect you guys for trying to take on this challenge. Cannabis is a very complex plant, and that seems like a hurdle, but really it's opportunity because of the complexities of this plant. You have so many different elements that work with everybody's endocannabinoid system different. But one thing that never happens is you can't touch weed and get high, no matter whose endocannabinoid system you're in. So I think there's also barriers that maybe Tim Johnson could speak on better with security reasons. But we create these security problems by continually trying to impose more criminal penalties for it, keeping that black market thriving when we should be trying to eliminate that gap.
Follow up? Representative Sonnenberg with the question.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Just to follow up on the last question from Rep. Isaacson, is there also, or is this a fallacy that outdoor grow can't be, it's not controlled as much environmentally as indoor, and when it rains, whatever chemicals are in the rain could get into the crop, et cetera?
I appreciate the question. Let's look at the other side of that, right? So we lose a little bit of control environmentally, but what? At the expense of our carbon footprint, the production of fossil fuels going in to heat a grow room. Do you know, like you could have a 1,000-foot, I think it's like a 1,000-foot indoor grow room uses as much electricity as a Walmart. This is absurd, and there's no reason when you're putting it into edibles and lotions and topicals, you don't need all those flavor profiles like craft connoisseur people like us at the Cannabis Consumers Coalition care about. You're just doing that for the cannabinoids that plant contains. So why would we use these different light spectrums when we could get this source of energy for free?
Follow up? No. Representative Calendar with question.
Yeah, a couple of questions, and thank you for your advocacy again, as with everyone here. And partially to answer your questions, the concept of making Ohio a cannabis tourism site is wonderful. I think everybody testifying here would probably agree with that. However, that's something to work on in the future, and there will be bills after this passes or doesn't pass to try to enhance that. But I would suggest that we put our efforts into decriminalization, making sure the money goes home and protecting the rights people passed first, and then working on that. We're kind of pretty far behind Colorado and Oregon and California. And I'm not sure the will of the voters is to make Ohio the travel destination for cannabis users. But it is clearly the will of the voter to make it legalized and not criminal. So I admire your efforts, but that may be better looked at another bill. And one of the concerns I want to ask you about as a grower, and one of the concerns that we've heard a lot as far as the indoor grow preference over outdoor grow, is the use of herbicides and pesticides and the potential impact those things would have on the final product. And one of the efforts and successes of our program so far is that when a consumer goes to a dispensary and buys a product, you know everything that's in there between our testing and our security and the seed to sale monitoring. How would you address that concern of the herbicides and pesticides? Not just I don't think it's just chemicals and rain or kids being exposed by running through. I think there's a lot of concerns about that element as well. How would you address that concern?
Well, I think Rodney Hash talked well about it earlier. But I guess I would address that by trying to open up that testing, not only for home growers to where they can go send samples in, but I would also make the same standards apply, right? So Out in Meigs and Athens, we coordinate with our farmers and our neighbors. So for instance, when the sheep farmer here knows that the corn farmer next to him is going to spray that day, he's able to move those sheep away. But there's obviously you got 2 plants in the way. You can't just move your plants, but you can communicate with people and find a way to work things out, because we've been doing that in agriculture for a very long time. And not only is that the nature of most farmers, but cannabis people even take that to more extremes, right? We have respect for each other and our communities that we live in. So I think those challenges are, and not to mention, when we consider all the herbicides and pesticides on our food that don't get tested as rigorously, how are the standards for cannabis so much higher than the standards for food? You could go swab a tomato and find all these same things on it. So I guess I do appreciate you calling me out about rambling about my fantasies. I know we're far from that point. I'm just like visualizing this deli style where you can walk in and actually let your olfactory system and your limbic system recall memories. Cannabis is an aromatherapeutic crop, right? So I'm fantasizing right now and feeling the effects of it. I can't wait to smell it without even consuming it. I want to be able to smell it. And I think that's what would, even if it's a decade down the road, that's where it needs to go to help close that gap between why would somebody not go to Athens where they can smell 20 different kinds of cannabis, pick it up, smell it, touch it, know that they want to buy it before they go spend $200 on a purchase in a bag that they can't see the product. They're just fed a whole bunch of deceit on the back, terpenes and minor cannabinoids, instead of what matters most, the olfactory system, the smells and aromas.
Follow up?
Thank you. And I think a lot of folks share that long-term vision, kind of like our analogous to our wine industry in Ohio, where we're slowly becoming more and more nationally recognized for what our soil can produce and our climate can produce, and our great fresh water, especially, not to detract from your area, but from Northeast Ohio. So I think that's a great vision in the future, and certainly would participate. But I just don't want to build expectations in this bill to get us there, because first we have to make sure we're not criminalized before we can get to the artistic phase, which hopefully we get to. On the herbicides, pesticides, other agricultural runoff issue, I assure you my concerns are not limited to cannabis, but also to the food we eat. And I think nationally we're near a crisis situation with that. So the concerns are not limited to cannabis, but that doesn't mean they're not legitimate concerns. Your tomato swab having all kinds of chemicals is a very good example of that. So thank you for pointing out it's not limited to cannabis.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Cece Brown from Invita Nutraceuticals. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Chairman and members of the committee, I come before you today as a small business owner and an Ohioan, deeply committed to the growth and integrity of our local hemp industry. The issue before us is time sensitive and demands immediate legislative action. However, it's crucial that the measures that we pass do not inadvertently harm the very industry that Ohio has the potential to benefit from. Senate Bill 56 poses a direct threat to the survival of small businesses like mine and ultimately to the consumers who rely on these products. Rather than restricting access to hemp products and pushing Ohio's small businesses out of work, we need regulatory framework that ensures that these products remain accessible while prioritizing public health and safety. My husband and I have invested our life savings into our business, which is not only crucial for our family's survival, but also provides opportunities for our children to pursue their dreams. Through the success of our business, my daughter has the chance to further her athletic and academic career in Chester, England, which was all made possible by the small business I built right here in Ohio. We're a manufacturer and a distributor of hemp products based here in Ohio, and the impact of Senate Bill 56 as currently written would be devastating. One of the most concerning provisions of SB 56 is the proposal to move hemp into dispensaries. While some consumers may feel comfortable purchasing from dispensaries, this would alienate a large portion of the consumer base. There is a significant stigma surrounding dispensaries, especially among older clientele. I have had the opportunity to do outside sales for my distribution company, which put me in many smoke shops, convenience stores, gas stations all around Ohio. I met numerous individuals who consumed hemp products and had the privilege of hearing all of their stories. Take Ed, for example. Ed purchases hemp gummies from his local marathon store, the very gummies that I manufacture here in Ohio, and they help his PTSD, and he is able to purchase them from his local corner store. Ed's story is just one of many. For people like him, the accessibility of these products at local stores is not just convenient, it's essential. I am also deeply concerned about the impact that this legislation would have on the manufacturing side of our industry. If hemp products are moved into dispensaries, who's going to manufacture them? Will it be the same multi-billion-dollar marijuana companies that produce marijuana gummies? By doing so, we are effectively handing over control of the industry to these large corporations, sidelining small businesses like mine. Ohio's small businesses trusted that our state would protect us. The actions outlined in SB 56 would harm those of us who have been committed to doing things the right way, investing in our communities, and operating with transparency and responsibility. I respectfully ask that you reconsider the provisions of SB 56 that would drive Ohio's small businesses out of the industry. My company sources our hemp from a lab in Colorado that complies with Ohio laws and provides full panel testing, ensuring we're doing everything we can to uphold the integrity of this industry. Just yesterday, we had an unannounced inspection from the Ohio Department of Agriculture, which we passed at 100%. I would like to extend an invitation to each one of you to tour our facility and to see where you can witness firsthand how the entire manufacturing and distribution process operates. I urge you to work with us, the small businesses that make up the backbone of Ohio's economy, to ensure that we can continue providing these essential products for our community while staying viable and thriving. The future of our small business and the people that we serve deserve it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? Representative Sonnenberg with question.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for coming in to testify, Ms. Brown. Question, so you do agree that we need some regulation and that there are issues with some of the products that are sold at, let's say, gas stations that are marketed towards children, correct?
Through the chair to the representative, yes, there needs to be regulation, and that's what we need to work on, not banning an entire industry that is actually helping people. There needs to be regulation, not prohibition.
Follow up.
As part of that regulation, would you agree for like the product that you sell, for it to be sold for only 18 and over consumers?
Through the chair to the representative, I would agree that it would be at least 18, if not 21 and older, that should only have access to those products, correct?
Follow up.
Okay, no follow up. Thank you.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for your time.
Our next witness is Wesley Bryant from 420 Craft Beverages. Welcome.
Thank you. Chairman Thomas, Ranking Member Isaacson, and Vice Chair Swearingen, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide opposition testimony today. My name is Wesley Bryant. I'm the founder of 420 Craft Beverages, a licensed hemp processor under Ohio License 391187P. I appear today as someone who is actively regulated, audited, and in compliance with both state and federal hemp law. SB 56 proposes to redefine entire categories of lawful hemp products as intoxicating and move them under the exclusive jurisdiction of the dispensary system governed by the federally illegal state marijuana program. But here's the legal flaw. Those licenses are closed. Today, as a fully compliant hemp processor, I cannot obtain one of those dispensary licenses because the marijuana licensing system is not only capped, it is closed to all new applicants. And under SB 56, it would be closed permanently to anyone who does not already hold one. So this bill doesn't just regulate my business, it extinguishes it. It nullifies my active hemp license without due process and places me into a regulatory framework I am legally barred from entering. Let's be clear about the constitutional implications here. First, federal preemption. The 2018 Farm Bill codified 7 USC 16390. It defines hemp products to include all derivatives, cannabinoids, and isomers below 0.3% delta-9 THC on a dry weight basis. That definition is binding. In AK Futures versus Boyd Street Distro, the Ninth Circuit reaffirmed that even hemp products with psychoactive properties fall under federal protection as long as they meet that threshold. Second, the Dormant Commerce Clause. This bill carves out Ohio's entire hemp market for a closed class of marijuana operators. That's discriminatory on its face. In Tennessee Wine versus Thomas, the U.S. Supreme Court held that states cannot erect market access barriers favoring local incumbents in regulated industries, especially when those industries intersect with federally lawful goods. Third is due process. SB 56 strips my license of its value without compensation, notice, or recourse. That's a regulatory taking. And as established in U.S. versus Carlton and Eastern Enterprises versus Apfel, retroactive economic penalties that must meet strict scrutiny, particularly when they eliminate vested rights. Finally, this bill opens Ohioans to liability under 18 U.S.C. 922 G3 by reclassifying legal hemp as marijuana use, jeopardizing firearm rights without clear public notice. I support the stated goal of protecting children and ensuring adequate consumer protections for these products. This can be accomplished through age verifications, banning synthetic cannabinoids, and tightening enforcement. But SB 56 doesn't do that. It rewrites the rules, closes the gate, and locks out law-abiding operators like me with no path forward. That is not regulation, that is exclusion, and I urge this committee to reject it. Thank you, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Representative Sennenberg with question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Bryan, thanks for your testimony today.
Sure, thank you.
So is your testimony that under the current version of Senate Bill 56 as passed, we'd be violating the 2018 Farm Bill because of the, I guess, the dry weight basis definition?
Sure. So a lot of this, and I'm sorry, through the chair to the rep. Was that the whole question?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of this issues, and I heard mentioned today of these products that are enticing to children, or these very, very, very psychoactive products that are on the market. Essentially, the Farm Bill specified, and I'll read it to you. The plant cannabis sativa L and any part of that plant, including the seeds thereof and all derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, acids, salts, and salts of isomers, whether growing or not, with a delta-9 THC concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. I want to emphasize in there, at no point did it say that they could take it into a lab and convert it to something that it wasn't already. Even though you go from CBD to THC, there's still a synthetic action that happens there. So I bring this up to bring attention to the committee here that if you guys would just adopt the federal definition of what is federally legal hemp and exclude converted cannabinoids from that, I'm going to give you a for instance basis. Right now, the market says a 3 to 5 gram gummy that's what is bought and purchased, even in the medical dispensaries. You can only put 3 milligrams per gram into that product and be legal federally in state. So that means a 5 gram gummy could only contain 15 milligrams if you got rid of the converted cannabinoids. Point blank, period. That means all of these high potency 500 milligrams, I've seen it multiple times in here with people bringing up all these products, these 1,000 milligram Nurge ropes and stuff. It wouldn't exist. simply won't be there with natural cannabinoids. So I implore this committee to really look at that federal definition, and anybody that needs further clarification on that, I'd be more than happy to do so. But I think ultimately that fixes a lot of the root problems that sit right here in Ohio's gas stations, liquor stores, you name it. That fixes a lot of those problems right out the gate.
Follow up?
I hope that answered that question.
Yes, thank you. As far as the beverages, do you think the 5 milligram limit under the current version of the bill is okay?
Depending on where it's sold. As someone that sells beverages, and I do make things, just to be clear, I do make things that are over 5 milligrams. However, when you're talking about bars and restaurants, I feel a 5 to 10 milligram cap there is honestly necessary. But where I don't agree with it is in other locations such as carryouts, liquor stores, gas stations. So, you know, on and on. I can go in there and buy a Monaco into any of those gas stations, and those are double shots of liquor right there. I can't buy that same Monaco in a restaurant or bar. So I think there's some definite difference between firms that carry those products. And I think that essentially capping bars and restaurants at a reasonable number, I think that's a necessary evil. I think we can move forward from there in the future, but putting those same caps on carryouts and take-home products, I think is foolish. And I can't speak for all the dispensaries in the state of Ohio, but I've been in there, a lot of them ones in Cleveland and Columbus. There's no infrastructure there to handle the thousands of beverages that are on the market right now.
Follow up?
No follow-up, thank you.
Any other questions for witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Kevin Henderson from RYYN Botanicals. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, Ranking Member, honorable members of the committee, my name is Kevin Henderson, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am the owner of Wren Botanicals. We are located in London, Ohio, and a company that is designed on bringing all-natural organic hemp-derived THC beverages to consumers. Our flagship product, Hydro, is currently in production and set to launch in July. But if Senate Bill 56, as it currently stands, passes, is going to affect my business along with countless others. We will not survive. Ohio has long prided itself on supporting small businesses and fostering entrepreneurship, offering people the opportunity to pursue the American dream. That belief is what has driven my support for the Conservative Party for the majority of my voting life. A party built on common sense policies that help businesses grow and prosper. Yet Senate Bill 56 contradicts these values, imposing unnecessary restrictions and threatening innovation, competition, and economic opportunity for Ohio entrepreneurs. A brief history. In 2015, Ohioans overwhelmingly rejected the state's first attempt at legalization, not due to opposition to the cannabis itself, but due to concerns over monopolization and unfair market control. This decision reaffirmed a key Ohio principle: a free and competitive market where businesses, especially small businesses and independent ones, have the opportunity to succeed. Now we stand at yet another regulatory crossroads, one that threatens to cripple Ohio's ability to compete in a growing industry and devastate small businesses statewide. Restrictive policies such as limiting hemp-derived THC products to under 10 milligrams per serving would not just affect manufacturers, but also over 850 retail stores across Ohio. These include smoke shops, vape stores, liquor retailers, and CBD stores such as SunMed and Centerville, many of which have integrated hemp-derived THC products to meet growing consumer demand and remain competitive. The financial consequences of over-regulation extend far beyond immediate losses. Ohio's small retailers risk losing millions in revenue annually as consumers turn to unregulated alternatives or out-of-state purchases. Hemp-derived THC market growth would stall, preventing new business is job creation, and local economic development. Other states such as Minnesota, Colorado, and Oregon are all thriving under balanced regulation, while Ohio risks falling behind in innovation, entrepreneurship, and tax revenue. If Senate Bill 56 moves forward as written, Ohio will lose businesses, eliminate jobs, and weaken the ability to compete in an emerging market. A clear generational shift is underway. I'm not sure if you guys have seen some of the reports that are coming out. Millennials and Gen Zers are increasingly turning to hemp-derived THC products over alcohol, driven by health concerns, changing social norms, and demand for functional alternatives. In 2023, Gallup poll found that alcohol consumption among adults aged 18 to 34 dropped from 72 to 62% over the past decade. Over the past 2 decades, a 2024 Lending Tree survey revealed that 55% of Gen Z regret spending as much money on alcohol, fueling interest in health-conscious alternatives like hemp-derived THC beverages. Alcohol use disorder affects 10% of Americans over the age of 12, contributing to over 140,000 deaths annually. Excessive alcohol use accounts for 13.5% of deaths among adults aged 20 to 39, emphasizing the need for alternatives. Hemp-derived THC beverages offer a moderate controlled alternative to alcohol, allowing consumers to enjoy social experiences without the severe health risks associated with excessive drinking. Restricting these products is going to push consumers back towards alcohol. In November 23, Ohio voters decisively approved Issue 2, legalizing recreational cannabis for adults over 21 years old. With 57% of the vote, this overwhelming majority made clear that Ohioans support regulated cannabis market, recognizing the economic and social benefits. I urge this committee to carefully consider the far-reaching impact of Senate Bill 56, not just on business owners like me, but Ohio's economy, consumer choice, and its ability to compete in a growing national market. Thank you for the time. Are there any questions?
Mr. Henderson, thank you for the testimony. For your testimony, are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Sarah Coya Bryant from Cool Digs, Inc. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman Thomas, members of committee. I'm Sarah Coya Bryant. I'm a small business owner in Athens, Ohio, and a new member of the Cannabis Consumer Coalition. I start with Article 1 from the Ohio Constitution. All political power is inherent in the people. Government is instituted for their equal protection and benefit, and they have the right to abolish, reform the same whenever they may deem necessary. So rights become real when people demand them. Ohio adopted the powers of our statutory initiative back in 1912, and Ohioans understood the initiative power as a meaningful check of your legislative body. So Ohio even provides some protections for citizens' authority. And the ORC in 73128 states that a mayor can't veto a law passed by citizens' initiative. 73136, no person shall knowingly misrepresent language of a citizens' initiative. I can assure you that issue 2 was clearly explained and embraced by Ohio voters. In a recent case, Western Resolve Law Review, Derek Klinger states that a common assumption is that Ohio lawmakers have complete discretion to alter voters' approved laws because, unlike some other states, it's not clearly and explicitly prohibited. But Ohio courts have never ruled on this issue, leaving the question unresolved and creating unnecessary not only for our marijuana law, but also for the future liability of Ohio's century-old statutory initiative power. So while Ohio has not taken this up, several state Supreme Courts have explored the subject of citizen legislation protections, including the most recent one of Utah's Supreme Court in 2024, decision of the League of Women Voters of Utah versus Utah State Legislature, where the court unanimously rejected the legislators' argument that the constitutional silence on legislative overrides means that they were free and permitted to modify the law the people passed. Utah ruled that the original public meaning of the state's constitution initiative provisions declared that all political power is inherent in the people, and that they have the right to alter and reform their government as the public welfare may require. The court held that the constitutional protections initiative laws from initiated laws are protected from legislative interference when they seek to reform the state government, but it doesn't impose an absolute bar on legislative changes. They held that they could clarify the constitutional standard, explaining that the legislature may amend initiative laws so long as the changes did not infringe on the people's reform right. For example, if the amendment furthered or facilitated the reform, but did not impair it. So removing the social equity in Tier 3 program infringes on the people's reform rights. While this bill may be an improvement over House Bill 160, it still falls far short of honoring the intent of issue 2. My company supplies goods to Ohioans, current license grows, and small-scale cultivators in Southeast Ohio. We're eager to grow alongside hemp and cannabis farmers in our community, and every day of delay in implementing issue 2 costs us and others like us vital opportunities and incomes. Athens County voted in favor of legalization by 78%. Like Josh was mentioning earlier, we imagine a future shaped by locally owned craft and cannabis businesses, much like the small business industry that defines our region with breweries. Sub-Bill 56 jeopardizes that vision. We voted for access, specifically for the micro-cultivation licenses and new dispensary licenses designed to support small business, disadvantaged entrepreneurs, and local communities. This bill funnels that opportunity to large, wealthy corporatives, often from outside of Ohio, while excluding real Ohioans with our knowledge, experience, and community ties. It restricts cannabis beverage sales to dispensaries, leaving out our local businesses and retailers. And even more concerning, it redirects our tax revenue from the municipalities to the state's general fund. This undermines the local reinvestment monies that were central to our public support for issue 2. If the problem is there's no mechanism to currently redirect the funds to our communities, I would urge you to create one. That's your job. Cannabis users are not a public safety threat. This bill criminalizes harmless behavior such as outdoor use and sharing between adults, actions that waste law enforcement resources and stigmatize responsible users. Sub-Bill 56 erodes home rule and democratic decision-making. It dismantles our pathway to entrepreneurship for working Ohioans and replaces it with the corporate monopoly. We're not passive observers. We're organizing a coalition of farmers, consumers, and advocates, and we will return with even larger numbers to defend our rights and the laws we passed. I urge you to stand with Ohio's voters and not against them.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. John Lynch.
Vice Chair Matthews, members of the committee, good afternoon. I'm an Ohio beverage manufacturer, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify. I'm here in support of additional language that would allow bars and restaurants to continue serving hemp beverages to customers. Hemp beverages are currently served in hundreds and hundreds of bars and restaurants throughout Ohio. People are enjoying them safely, and the language in this bill is going to make these beverages even safer by lowering the amount of THC allowed in these drinks. With the new hemp beverage excise tax, the state will collect 33 cents on every can sold. The revenue generated by bars and restaurants would add millions of dollars to the general revenue fund. The people consuming these drinks come from every walk of life. Tennis moms, football dads, retirees, veterans, young people who don't drink beer, the list goes on and on. My last reason for wanting these drinks in bars and restaurants is more personal. I don't use THC or drink these. I prefer beer, but I really enjoy being able to sit at a bar and have a conversation with someone who's drinking what they want to drink. And Ohioans really do want to drink these at bars and restaurants. Thank you again for considering an amendment that would keep these beverages in bars and restaurants. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Yes, Ranking Member.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your testimony. I represent over the Rhine, Walnut Hills, downtown Cincinnati, so a lot of places, bars and restaurants that would be harmed by this prohibition. And I honestly, I just don't get it. Can you think of why would we, because the way the bill is currently drafted, in my understanding, the bars and restaurants can sell these products, just not for consumption on the premises.
Correct. Or through the
Can you, like, do you have any concerns about the sales on the premises? Have you heard of any negative ramifications of sales on the premises? Just, I'm trying to wrap my head around why we would make that distinction. What's going
through the chair? No, I've been selling these products for about a year now throughout the state. Mine are very low dose. Ours are all 2 milligrams or 2.5 milligrams. We actually have talked to bars and we were going with a very low dose because a bar wants to sell several of these. They don't want to sell one drink that's 10 milligrams and then have somebody buy nothing else. I don't like, there's always a fear with any bar product of overindulging. And I guess, that's the fear with this. It's just a new thing. But I think the last year has played out where these have really taken up a huge market share in the bars that are doing it. And I haven't heard of a single instance of a negative outcome.
Thank you.
Follow
Thank you,
up?
Chair. No.
Great. Rep. Callender, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was out of the room. Was it 3 weeks ago when you testified? So I wanted to be here today and disclose, which you tastefully did not in your testimony, that you also have legislators who consume your product. And I appreciate what you have provided. And just for full disclosure to everyone, you and I have had drinks at the bar where you're drinking beer and I'm having your products and really appreciate it. What would be the impact on you as a local business if this law were to go into effect and in effect criminalize something that currently is common usage?
Through the chair, there are specific numbers. Like this bill would still allow me to sell to bars grocery stores, convenience stores for to go. And like some really rough numbers, conservative, but to keep them simple, Ohio sold about 2.5 billion 12-ounce cans or bottles last year. Of that, again, conservative, but to keep the numbers easy, 250 million of those were sold in bars and restaurants. If you look at this product and the way it's trending, I'd say, again, conservatively, 10% of that bar market could easily be these types of drinks. And I think that's really conservative. That's 25 million cans sold. So that's a big part for me, but it's also, that's where I think the
some of the estimates of revenues generated by these types of drinks are the really, really low end. That 25 million cans would be $8.3 million for the general revenue fund. And I think the grocery store market is going to crush in this area too. So it wouldn't put me out of business, but that's why I ended my testimony by saying, like, it's kind of a personal reason too. I want to be able to sit with people and drink what they want to drink. Thank you.
Follow up?
Yes, so that is for you and for the actual CBD or hemp-derived THC-containing beverages. Have you talked to anyone, or do you have any knowledge? There's some numbers out there that bars themselves have seen a 20% drop in revenue since issue 2 passed. Have you given any thought or had any discussion to the bar and music venues that have liquor licenses, owners and management, as to the impact that this would have on them? Would it further that loss? Is this product a way to kind of stopgap the loss that we're seeing there?
Through the chair. Yes, every bar I go into right now, this is the conversation, like whether these are going to stay legal or not. There are several beer and wine wholesalers that now carry these products. And so every bar now has the opportunity to carry them, and very few are turning it down. And it's in part because of that. They see a sector of people who are no longer drinking alcohol, and this is providing an alternative.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
testimony. Mr. R.J. Creamer.
Vice Chairman Matthews, Ranking Member Isaacson, and all members of the House Judiciary Committee, I stand before you today not as a politician or a lobbyist, but as a testament to the power of opportunity and the enduring spirit of the American dream. I'm here to urge you to oppose Sub Bill 56, a bill that is vital to the future of countless small businesses and hardworking Ohioans. My story begins on a 13-acre farm about 60 miles north of here, a couple miles outside of a village of 300 people. So to say I come from humble beginnings is an understatement. My first 29 years of living, the only way you could describe it would be extremely hardworking. Growing up on 13 acres, that's not a lot. So I baled hay, I baled straw, I raised sheep, I loaded hogs, I milked cows, I did carpentry, construction, grout work, landscaping, split wood. There would be some days where I would wake up at 5 to milk cows, bale hay in the afternoon, and then I would go bounce at a local bar until 2:30, go home, sleep 3 hours, milk cows again. That all changed one day after I got into a dispute with my father, as one does when you farm with him for so many years. After that, I walked into a smoke shop here on High Street looking for a change, just a different way to earn a living, basically anything that would get me off the farm, right? And luckily, that single opportunity was a chance to earn a living in a different way. It transformed my life trajectory. It was a lifeline, a bridge to a better future. That job allowed me to support my family, to ease the burdens of my parents that they'd carried for so long. I was able to improve their living conditions, to provide them with a level of comfort and security that I had only dreamed of. Finally, after all those years of hard work, the American dream was unfolding before my very eyes. I say that now. 4 years ago, I walked into that smoke shop, started as a cashier. I stand before you today. I now own that smoke shop that I'm speaking about. I've been able to hire men and women of every race, religion, sexual orientation, creed, walk of life, and pay them a livable wage in uncertain times. And then I've been able to provide them promises of maybe a similar future to my own. And if SB 56 passes, that would pretty much undermine what I've been doing and what I've been continuing to work on in my life. Our customers deserve the freedom to choose the products they consume. With sensible regulation, we can ensure a safety and responsible industry, one that benefits both consumers and state's economy. I know some may be concerned about the potential impacts of this industry, but I urge you to listen to the voices of your constituents. Ohio voters do not want to see hemp vanish from our stores, nor do they want to see it regulated solely to dispensaries. They want a diverse market with options and the freedom to make informed choices. Furthermore, I must address the ongoing attempts by the marijuana industry to cast a negative light on current hemp retailers. This is nothing more than a thinly veiled effort to monopolize the market, to restrict competition, and concentrate power in the hands of the few. Such a move would fly in the face of everything America stands for opportunity, competition, and the freedom to pursue one's dream. I implore you, members of the State House Legislature, to oppose SB 56. Support small businesses, support the American dream, and support the freedom of Ohioans to make their own choices. Let us work together to create a thriving and responsible industry that benefits all Ohioans, not just a select few. I thank you for your time and consideration. I will try my best to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions? Seeing none to my left or right. Thank you so much for your testimony. All right. And now Jamie Courtney, please.
Thank you, guys. Chairman Thomas, Vice Chair Matthews, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the Ohio House Judiciary Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the testimony in opposition to the hemp provisions included in Senate Bill 56. As a small business owner operating a SunMed Your CBD store in Bellefontaine, Ohio, I am deeply concerned about the devastating fiscal impact this bill would have on responsible hemp retailers like myself and the communities we serve. Senate Bill 56 would effectively ban the sale of nearly all hemp-derived products from stores like mine by restricting access exclusively to licensed marijuana dispensaries. While this may not be labeled a ban outright, the real-world result is the same: closure of compliant, law-abiding small businesses across the state. When the Ohio legislation legalized the hemp in 2019 following the federal farm bill, entrepreneurs like me made significant investments in launching storefronts, building customer trust, and creating jobs. We followed the law and advocated for reasonable regulation, including age restrictions, testing, labeling requirements, and enforcement against bad actors. But Senate Bill 56 doesn't regulate our industry, it just dismantles it. By forcing hemp products with even trace amounts of THC into dispensaries, the state is unfairly picking winners and losers, rewarding marijuana operators while shutting out hundreds of small local businesses that serve a very different customer base. The majority of my customers are older adults, often over the age of 55, seeking natural alternatives for wellness, sleep, or pain relief, and are not interested in getting high. There is a better path. I urge the committee to consider the approach taken in House Bill 198, which responsibly regulates hemp without dismantling the industry. This bill includes age restrictions, licensing, product testing, child-resistant packaging, and truth in labeling, which is the start of a robust framework to help protect the consumers while preserving access and fairness. In closing, please understand Senate Bill 56 doesn't just regulate hemp, it bans it from responsible small businesses like mine that have played by the rules, supported our communities, and provided safe, effective products to our Ohioans who depend on them. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Great. Thank you so much for your testimony. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming today. All right, we have Tasha Roundtree, please.
Good afternoon, ranking members and all the members of the House today. I started this journey 10 years ago. I started this journey 10 years ago after I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian. I had a 10-pound tumor and had to have it removed. The medication that they had me on caused me severe constipation and ripped my intestines apart. Until a nurse whispered in my ear, go to Michigan, because my family was ready to send me to Colorado because that was the only place that we had been told where you could get medical marijuana. I did not want to become an addict because that was the beginning of the opioid crisis. I was looking for an alternative way. I went to Michigan, but unfortunately Michigan would not treat us because I was not a Michigan resident. So I had to give up my Ohio residency and my Ohio driver's license. I had to stay in a homeless shelter. But the homeless shelter would not accept me because I was coming for medical purposes. So I had to get a hotel room. I had to buy food and submit a receipt that I was not coming to be a burden on the state of Michigan. And that is how I established my Michigan residency. So in order to become a medical marijuana patient, that is how I received a caregiver. Once I received a caregiver and became a patient, I received a scholarship to actually go to a cannabis college. I obtained a certificate at that time because at that time, you couldn't even teach cannabis because that was teaching the facilitation of a illegal drug. So they were threatening to put teachers in jail at that time for even teaching how to grow. But I studied cultivation, processing, and dispensary management. I came back to Ohio and worked with the clerk of courts. I worked with at that time, it was Sheriff Beal. I worked with the University of Dayton and ran expungement clinics. I wrote the legislation that appeared on a ballot, and we actually legislatively decriminalized marijuana in the city of Dayton. And we have done the governor's pardons and expedited clemency. And we have done this to make sure that patients were safe and not going to jail, because we found that 7 out of 10 African Americans or people of color were receiving the tickets. We did that and got signatures so that rich people could get business license. And we were told that if we played the game, that one day we would absolutely have our chance to get our license. We did that, and issue 2 passed. And we were told that with that, we would get social equity license. And then we were told, it's illegal and we can't get it. There was no way for us to get into the industry legally. So we got into the hemp business, because now we could be federally legal. And now we can't even get into that because now it goes to the dispensary, which is closed. But now every rich white man can open up a dispensary in my neighborhood and sell marijuana in my neighborhood, a drive-through dispensary in my neighborhood that we would go to jail for, couldn't go to college for, couldn't get a loan for, get kicked out of housing for. But the hemp products that we were allowed to sell, we now can't sell. So I'll go to jail for selling a legal product that's federally legal, but you all gave out additional license and didn't open it up to the public. You simply gave people who already had licenses license. But here we have hemp products in a way that they're already licensed to check IDs. So if you just regulated the hemp products, we wouldn't be here. If you gave us simply a way of getting into the industry legal, we would become partners and not pariahs. We want legitimacy. If you trust convenience stores to sell aspirin, extra strength aspirin, over-the-counter aspirin, why are we not calling hemp over-the-counter instead of intoxicating? Let's work together instead of fighting and becoming combative. There is already a system to set and to track IDs. There's a system. There's a system to make sure. And what we don't have a system for, let us regulate and work together. And I apologize for going over time, but I have been working on this for 10 years. I have sacrificed. I have worked with the homeless to get them off of drugs by getting them to use cannabis and then transferring them off of cannabis to hemp, where if they were having a bad day, they didn't have to go to a dispensary. They could go to a convenience store and get what they need. There is absolutely no reason why we are still having these conversations when we know what works. And what works is opportunity. If social equity scares you, let's call it craft. But there's no way we should have been allowed to vote on something that has already been deemed illegal. How does the Attorney General allow us to vote on something? And how do you generate money in a fund and then tell us we can't get it and we can't get the money? And you lose the opportunity. Everything in the state of Ohio cannot be a lose-lose for every woman, every minority, every veteran, every disabled person. Are you here to help us or are you here to cripple us? Shout out to Teddy Smith, who made sure that every voice got heard today. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Questions? Ranking member?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your testimony. I'll echo the good job Teddy's doing. A lot of shout outs today. I want to make sure, try and put a finer point on it, on something that I think is so important that what you're saying is, my understanding is and correct me if I'm wrong here, that because of the limited entrance into the sort of formalized cannabis market that Issue 2 set up, a lot of the people and small businesses that are run by veterans, by minorities, especially by members of the Black community, are in the hemp industry because it was so hard to get into the cannabis industry. And that by going after the hemp industry in this way without finding some sort of compromise, a lot of those minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses are at risk of going under. Could you just explain a little bit about what that risk is, or if that's true, like why you think that is?
Absolutely. When you all say that you can only have a finite number of cultivators and a finite number of processors and a finite number of dispensary owners, right? You can have as many cultivators as you want, and you can have as many processors as you want. But if you don't have a place to sell it, which is the dispensary, that's the shelf space. So you could be a processor, but if you can't get the product, the biomass to make the product, you don't have a product to put on the shelf. So if you don't have enough, if you can't get in to grow the product, then you can't get in to make the product. And then that means there's no room for you. So if there's no license that are available, there's no way for you to get in. So the only way that you can get in is to go through hemp. But a hemp product would make sense to me is to say, well, let's use this as lower dosage, where now you actually can market a product. Now you can actually advertise a product. Now you can have let's say a music fest with hemp products to say, oh, this sells, oh, this sells, this sells. You can do product research and management by giving them an opportunity and say, now this actually works for this disorder. This works for this. Now you can take it up a grade. It's almost like if you would say, hemp is the version of aspirin at 200 milligrams, 400 milligrams, but ibuprofen is the dispensary level. Or you say, hemp is the cooler and dispensary is the Hennessy. So they can work together without competing, but it's just a greed of, we want your money too, because we see people wanting you, but everybody doesn't want to get high. Some people just want to get healthy, because when we say we want that travel and tourism, why do you want to get healthy? Because we want to go to the concerts. We want to go skydiving or fishing or whatever it is people do when they're not throwing up or sick or hurt or in pain. We want to live. We want to have a life. We want to be able to go enjoy things that you can't do when you are sick, when you are bleeding to death on a couch.
Seeing no other questions, thank you so much for your testimony and for being here today.
Thank you.
Kinsey Cherry, please.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Kenzie Cherry, and I've worked in Ohio's cannabis industry for over 4 years now. I travel all over the state and have had the privilege of meeting hundreds of patients and consumers. I've heard firsthand how cannabis has changed and in some cases even saved lives. I'm not a politician, and speaking here today is a little bit intimidating for me, but I know the ways that cannabis can benefit people. I have seen what it does for the people across Ohio, and I know that Senate Bill 56 does not reflect that. Over 57% of Ohioans voted to legalize cannabis through Issue 2. That included promises of social equity, protections for tenants, fair access to medicine, and long-term revenue for our communities. This bill breaks those promises. Instead of 36% in tax revenue to townships and municipalities indefinitely, it drops that to just 25% for 7 years. It adds vague and confusing language about potency, limiting access for patients who rely on stronger medicine and forcing them to pay more for relief. It also punishes the very people who were harmed by cannabis criminalization from barring them from working in the legal industry. That's just not justice. Cannabis isn't the problem in Ohio, but ignoring the will of the voters is. Please don't pass a bill that restricts access, deepens inequality, and shuts out the voices of people who've lived this reality. Ohio deserves better. Please reject Senate Bill 56.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. Great job, everyone in person. Please, everyone, look at your tablets. We have written testimony, some interested parties, some proponents, some opponents, and please make sure that you read through all of those, and they will all be part of the record, and we will also convert those submitted in-person testimonies that were not here to be part of the written record as well. With all of that, for Senate Bill number 56, that constitutes the third hearing for that bill. We now call forward House Bill number 108 for its second hearing on proponents. And we have Mr. Sexton here as a proponent, please.